I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Frankfurt Plant Board for Tuesday, November 14th, 2023 at 5 o'clock in the community room. This is our regular meeting, but it's a special meeting because we're not meeting on our regular meeting date because of the Thanksgiving holidays next week. So with this, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Member DeLong?
Here.
Member Keevan?
Here.
Member Mason?
Here.
Member Snyder?
Here.
Member Devin Mitchell?
Here.
We have a quorum. To do business, first item of business is consider approval of the minutes for October 17th, 2023 board meeting. Everybody should have them in their packet. Does anybody have any changes or corrections? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes are approved. Item number 2, financials. Consider accepting financials for the month ending October 31st, 2023. Mr. Dent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cubine, members of the board, good evening. We have made it through 4 months of the current fiscal year. Our fiscal year begins July of each year, ending on June 30. So starting on page 19 of your board packet, we'll look at the statement of net position for the period ending October 31st, 2023. This is very similar to a for-profit balance sheet. Looking at line 65, total assets of just under $233 million as of October 31st. You'll notice one thing that is just different from what you've seen last month and prior months is line 50. Line 50 shows the subscription assets of just around $368,000. That is due to the implementation of GASB 96, which is for subscription-based IT services. So it looks at those services that you have a right to use and books those as an asset. We'll get more into that, more explanation as we have the audit presentation in December. But that's something you've seen new and will be on there going forward.
Do they zero out anywhere, David, or they just basically stay as like an artificial asset?
They stay as an asset and then eventually expense over time.
Okay.
So it's just a way for users of financials to see a more accurate way of booking subscriptions that, in course, in our case, and a lot of businesses can get to a pretty high number.
Right.
Looking at liabilities, line 135, you can see the company was just over $106 million for the period. One notable thing there is you'll notice when we have bonds payable, line 100, December 1st, we'll be paying off our last bond payment. That's our Series 2013 electric and water revenue bonds. So we'll be working through those. When you take your assets minus liabilities, that gives you your total net position on line 155 of just over $127 million, bringing your total liabilities and net position equal to your assets of just over $233 million. I want to just flip over to page 21. 21 is our bonds, leases, and loans payable schedule. Just to follow up on what I mentioned on the bonds payable, you can see there we owe $440,000 currently on our electric water revenue bond series 13, which we'll make that last payment on December 1st. And then as far as other outstanding debt, our third lien lease for our telecom division just under $4.7 million as of October 31st. I'd like just for a minute to talk about the financial performance of the company through the first 4 months. Looking on page 23, this is the statement of revenues, expenses, and change in net position. When you'll notice on the third column, when you look at revenue and expenses versus our budget, you'll notice that we're outperforming on revenue and we are outperforming as well on expenses. Almost every expense item is below budget to this point, which is solid. So I'd like to just talk year over year for a moment. You'll notice that we have year over year, when you look at the third column versus the next to last column, we've got revenue growth of around 1%. And if you were to look at total expenses through the first 4 months, we're up about 8%. So that 1% revenue growth versus 8% expenses is not the way you would like to see it. It has resulted in a bottom line that's about 16% below where we were year over year. That just speaks to the same conversation we had during the budget discussions, is that expenses continue to see elevated or amounts over historical. But overall, the company is hanging about where we wanted it to be. Could always be better. But I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have about the first 4 months of the year.
Do we have any questions for David? If not, do we have a motion to accept the financials?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second simultaneously. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Accepted. Thank you, sir. Our next item is we've got 2 guest speakers tonight. The first one is Chuck Knowles. And we've talked about this some on the Home Street project. I didn't understand it. Sharmista tried to explain it to me. She couldn't explain it to me. Then I tried to explain it to Steve. I couldn't explain it to Steve. So you've got Chuck Knowles to explain it to all of us, right?
I do.
Okay.
You explained it perfectly, yes.
Yeah, I explained it perfectly that I don't understand what, yeah.
Last month, we presented the City of Frankfort's Home Street Revitalization Project. They're currently applying for federal grants, and a part of that grant process is to get some local matches, ideally 20% local matches. And as Mr. Cuba eloquently said, he had some follow-up questions, and I didn't want to misspeak for the city, so I invited Chuck Knowles today to come and answer any follow-up questions you have about the grant applications.
Good afternoon, Sharmista, thank you. It's been a pleasure coordinating with you to get to this point. First of all, I'd like to compliment Plant Board, Electric, Telecom, and Water teams on the work that was done on the 2nd Street Tiger project. I think that project was a success, and it is due, of course, to a major team effort and involved the Plant Board crews, and we really appreciate it. They worked well with our contractor, and I appreciate their involvement. Also, we've got the Transit Center parking garage project going on down behind the hotel. They made their first major deck pour today, so it's going up. And the Plant Board, of course, has been involved, again, with providing water, telecom, and electric service to that facility. I think the water was done last week, so we're hooked up to water. So again, we appreciate your teams and moving these projects along.
Well, we appreciate you being in charge, Chuck. Our people work well with you, and we appreciate all your efforts. So.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I've learned a lot. Both the 2nd Street Tiger project is parking garage. So these projects, I've learned a lot myself, and dealing with people. Of course, through your career, you learn to work with people, and so it's been a big benefit to me. On the Home Street project, we got a grant last November for about $770,000, and that's some federal and a lot of federal and some city money. And I think the Plant Board put up a little bit on that one too. That was for planning. That was for preliminary engineering and environmental assessment and producing environmental documents approval. They're winding that up. It's going to be done next month. We'll have 30% plans and also have an approved environmental document, we hope by the end of the year, calendar year. So the question is, what's the next step? So there is no funding for final design and getting it a right-of-way and utility relocations and construction. So the city submitted at the end of September a $27 million project request to USDOT through the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods Grant Program. I think it's a little over $3 billion plus nationwide, so we're wanting to get a little piece of that. The federal funds involved in that 27 was about a little over 20 million, and then we have a match of Frankfort Sewer Department, some Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and some city commitments to that. So our match was like 7 million plus, which is well over the 20% required. That's an 80-20 grant program. So in the conversation, for any grant program, for any grant project, infrastructure project, there's two things you try to do. One is to get buy-in from folks who have, I guess, a vested interest in the project, whether you're updating your infrastructure or providing services to the public, improved services. So you're looking for buy-in from folks, and that's the request for a match. The other one, of course, is any match that you do get, it just extends the grant funding further so you can do more as far as project work goes. So the Home Street Corridor, total project cost was well over what we wanted to I guess, apply for grant. We've got a grant consultant in Washington, D.C. It helps us determine what amount of money we probably should go after and how it would be competitive. We didn't want to ask for too much, so we kind of cut that corridor down from the Cole Place out to Henry Street, complete reconstruction, utility infrastructure. So that's where we came up with the $27 million. So I guess Sharmista and I, we've gone back and forth.
Can I ask Chuck, how much is the total? Is the goal to do the total project?
The goal is to do, that corridor is defined as High Street from West Main to Home Street, and then Home Street from Miro all the way out to the 127 interchange. That's the total project, and the estimate to do that project completely was well over what we wanted to go after as far as grant funding level. So what we did was we chose what we thought was a critical piece of that corridor. The goal is to eventually do it all, but we just couldn't do it initially in this initial grant application.
And so this phase that you've put in, the 27 million,
Correct.
that will do,
That'll do from Nicole Place out to Henry Street. I'm not sure, John, about the length of the street that's involved.
but I mean,
there.
that's the total project for that defined area?
Yes.
That would be
Yeah, 27
utilities,
million.
relocation,
Right,
paving,
right,
everything, okay.
Yeah, it involves complete pavement restoration. Like on Second Street, you dig it all up down to dirt, and then you bring the pavement back up with rock and asphalt. And that's an expensive item. And then utilities, sidewalks, bike lanes, some street trees, to make it kind of a complete street is the type of project they call it, is a complete street. And it's very similar to Second Street project. So that's the scope, and we had to, as I said, narrow down the limits of that and go after the grant request. So, you know, back to two things. One is you look for a commitment from folks on matching, and then you also, with any match that you get, again, you can extend the grant funding to do more work because you've got additional funding for that.
Do you have to have 20% to even apply, and is it just anything above 20 makes
Right.
the grant a
Right.
better chance of approve, or can you even go in with less than 20%?
I don't, my experience is USDOT, if you have less than a 20% grant, they won't even open it.
Okay,
So they're looking for at least a 20% grant. We were well over 20% with this submittal. And we were proud of that because that gives us, I guess, a leg up in their evaluations of our grant application because, you know, we were well over 20%, which indicates a lot of local commitment, you know, buy-in. So we're excited about submitting that application. We also have another chance to come up when the notice of funding opportunity comes on the street to go after more raised grant funding, which the preliminary engineering was done with. That's not as big a pot, but we're going to apply for that too. We're going to apply for it until we get something. And so I think your opportunity is not so much the grant application we've already submitted, that's gone.
and we didn't have any match in that, right?
No, you did not,
Right.
because there wasn't, Sharmista and I talked, and there
Right.
wasn't really time for you all
Yeah, yeah.
to take that in and take board action or whatever, because that was a short window. So I guess what we'd like to see, and of course it's all up to you, it's discretionary, we would like to see the plant board commit a match to another grant application that we will submit when we get an opportunity.
Can I call for simplicity, just for my own understanding? Could we call that like phase 2? Is that a good call? Is that a good way to label it? The next ask?
Well, the next ask will be very similar to the one we just submitted.
No, but could I call the first one phase 1, and this could be the next one is phase 2 of the project, or what would be a good way to label the next one?
Okay, typical definition of what's going on right now, preliminary engineering environmental, that's a phase 1.
Okay,
It's a phase 1 project. Phase 2 is final design, and then you have right-of-way utilities and construction. So what we're doing, what we've applied for is phase 2 funding.
okay, so this next
Yeah.
one will be,
Yeah, so we're either gonna get out of that reconnecting communities and neighborhood grant pot, we're gonna get either some of that, or if that is not successful, which we'll learn sometime next spring, we're gonna apply again here shortly for another grant program for the same thing, same $27 million.
But if
So
you got
we're trying to go after
but if you
something.
got the first one, if you get the 27 million, the first pot.
Right.
Then you're going for another pot to do more of the project?
Well, we won't know how that first application goes until next spring, but we think we'll have an opportunity to apply for another one before then, so we won't know. So we'll make the same application, 2 different grant programs.
But
For
is
the-
it to do the same work? You're
Same
just-
work, yes.
So
Same work.
you wouldn't be expanding,
No,
the
no,
size?
No, not
Okay.
yet.
it's just, that would mean less money?
Applications to different pots of.
Yeah,
So that would
application for
mean
different
less
pots.
money the
but-
city would put in, have to put out. Is that what the deal is?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think what we're
Okay.
trying to figure out I don't wanna say struggle, it's not that, what we're trying to figure out is, you got the planning money.
Correct.
And you applied for this pot of money, the
Right,
27,
right.
to do a defined
Right,
area.
right.
And I think, at least I was thinking, which then leads to my misunderstandings. I was thinking the next part would be, like, if what you've applied for, the 27 million, stopped at a certain street.
Right.
Then the next round of money would take it from that street on further down Home Street for another section, and we'd be matching for another section, which would take the project further down Home Street.
Well,
And then, because you've already got your match,
Right.
one way or the other for the first part.
right, but you all have an opportunity to commit something to this next application. We can change the funding amounts, you know what I'm saying?
But if you've already
We can-
overmatched the first one, wouldn't it make
Right.
sense to put our money for the
Right.
next?
Well, yeah, as I said, any match that we get just allows us to take the grant funding we get to do additional work.
And by additional, do you mean
Yeah.
further down Home
yeah,
Street?
Yeah, further activities, yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve.
yeah.
The 7 million, once y'all knew you had a commitment of 7 somewhere, why didn't y'all try to apply for more of the federal dollars? So you could make that extra 17% go toward another 80%.
Well, our DC strategist suggested that we kind of keep our ask for $20 million or less. So we didn't, once we got that higher batch, what you're saying is, why didn't you just ask for more federal funds and maybe not have so much match? Is that what you're saying,
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah.
Well, he suggested that we just kind of keep our ask for $20 million or less because of the magnitude of the project and how competitive that amount would be.
So my misunderstanding that John was supposed to be explaining to me this morning
And you imagine how that conversation went.
was that you have a $7 million match. So the money that we see in here, the 180,000, the 168 for electric, 30 for, is that part of this is this in addition
Okay.
to the 7 million on
Okay.
this grant?
The amount, we originally thought we would ask the plant board for $200,000 as an initial ask for a match. The estimates that you got here and these 20% commitments, you don't have to stick to that. I mean, the plant board could provide $100,000 if you wanted to the project, and that would be good.
But is that in addition to the $7 million? Is it
Yeah.
part of the same grant?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And as
So
I said, that additional match would provide, the opportunity to do, additional work on the project. That's all it does. It extends the opportunity to use grant money to do more work.
So Chuck, let me ask you, what would happen? Say the current grant that's pending gets turned down.
Right,
So now you still got your 7 million match intact somewhat.
yes,
Because, I mean, I
Yes.
imagine transportation will stay in
Right.
the deal, city and the sewer money.
right.
Then if you resubmitted a new grant for the same scope of work, and we put money in, then would you ask for more than the 20 million?
We could.
I mean, it would seem like
Yeah.
at that point you're
Yeah.
way over matching.
Yeah, well, yeah, we are, but then again, based on,
Competitive grant.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, based on experience from a grant strategist in Washington, they've been down this road many times, and they have a feel for what the USDOT, when they review these applications, what they're looking for. They're looking for a well over 20% match. They're looking for a ballpark figure that, they can deal with. Because, as I said, $3 billion plus, when you have all applicants from across the country, vying for that, something out of that pot, you want to kind of be reasonable about it. You don't want to over ask. So that's kind of I guess that's the guidance we've taken.
Okay.
And this may be a question more for Sharmista and our staff rather than anything else. Based on the way I read this, the water part is work we were probably going to have to do anyway. The electric, not so much, because we just did work on Wilkinson, we just upgraded a lot of stuff. And the cable, we've just strung fiber there. So,
Brand new,
I mean, we've got essentially electric and water, or electric and telecom, where that stuff has been done. And, you're essentially asking us, as part of this project, to go back in and, I'm assuming bury that underground, just like we did on Second Street. But, for me, if I were looking at this, the water to me is almost a no-brainer. because, you know, that's on our project list anyway. The electric and telecom, I'm gonna have a harder time putting up a match, just on initial thought, I'm gonna have a hard time approving a match for something where we've just made improvements and we're going back and we're just restringing what we've done or removing, you know, things underground. So that's just my thought. I just want to make sure I was clear on that in terms of the way the staff feels.
And
The scope of that piece of homes we're gonna do with this grant money, if we receive it, is gonna be basically relocating overhead to overhead. We're not gonna go underground anywhere with it. Because we're trying to provide sidewalks, usable sidewalks. You got pole lines and sidewalks, that type of thing. So we would be relocating some of those things to improve. Again, I understand that, you know, if you've upgraded some of that infrastructure here recently, would be part of the project to relocate that.
In your $27 million grant application, did you include our cost for water, electric, and cable in that $27 million?
No, that's strictly roadway improvements, sidewalk, bike lanes, all those types of things.
Because like John said, I mean, it'd be a shame. And that road's already been, and some improvement already, transportation did sun paving there short term, which made it, I mean, Home Street, definitely that road needed some work. It was a little roller coastery there but I mean, clearly, and it wouldn't make sense for y'all to go in there and pave it, then us come in with water later to replace it and just tear the place up again. If you went back in on the 27, if you get turned down, or if you don't get turned down, and we wanted to get the 80% match, because if you're putting sidewalks and everything, the poles are there, I mean, would there be a way to modify to get more federal funds to put the match up for the electric and the cable and our water to match against, or how would any federal matching for those costs work?
Yeah, typically you apply for a federal amount, and then if you're fortunate enough to receive that grant award, they don't change their amount. We can't change their amount.
So you said that the money to relocate the cable and electric is not in this grant?
No, it's not.
It's not? So what we would put forth as a match, that would make it whole? That would put the water, the utility relocation in it?
No.
So then what is?
We're basically talking, Steve, about a cash match is what we're talking about. Because you all are gonna make expenditures on your infrastructure changes, water, electric, and telecom, whatever the project needs to be done. And so we're just looking, I guess, for a cash match that furthers any grant funding we receive to do more work.
Sorry, Chuck. So
Yeah.
you're saying cash match, but who's matching us? Just the amount of the grant money you're bringing to the table? I guess that's what Steve is maybe asking. Is
Somewhat, yeah.
you're basically saying none of this is in a grant, but we put 20%, but who's bringing the other 80%?
Well, the 80% is the federal $20 million we've asked for.
Okay.
And the match is 20%. We're well over 20% on this particular application. So y'all would just be adding to that match, but you're bringing cash to the table. That could be spent on the project, you know, extending the project scope.
But the 20% we bring doesn't help you get the grant because you've already done it, right?
Right, but we're gonna apply for another one for the same thing. We're just gonna make a Xerox copy of what we just submitted.
Okay.
And we're gonna apply it to a different grant program. So anything, Jason, if y'all agree to provide some type of a match, then we would add that to that application, which just bumps our match up higher. Again, which gives us a little more leverage on reviewing that and showing these people are really into this project. Look at their match.
No, I got you on
type of
that.
thing.
But
Yeah.
I think what John was asking is, if you're going for a Xerox copy of the grant you already got, or
Yes.
and then you get awarded that one, you're getting a grant for the same scopes of work. How does that morph into doing something different or expanding the value of that?
Well,
those grants?
unfortunately, the timing is that, you know, you apply for a grant in late September and you don't hear anything until spring.
Sure. No,
But then you're gonna get a notice of funding opportunity for another grant program before spring. So we're gonna take advantage of that and apply again, hoping that we get one of the two. See what I'm saying?
but what if you get both?
They wanna award us both for the same project.
What if you get the first one? What would you still apply for something else in the spring?
Next opportunity, we probably would apply for additional grant funding to do more of the corridor than we haven't done with this first one.
But it sounds like there's a timing thing where,
It is.
Yeah.
It's all
so, I mean, I guess I'm just curious, sorry, I'm a grant writer, so.
No,
That's
it's okay.
what I do.
It's okay.
I'm just curious, I know that you guys have your priority as that first section, but why
Right.
you wouldn't put in the grant for the next section and then hedge your bets, like, okay, you get the other grant, but not this one, at least you're doing one section, but if you get both, then you can do the whole thing. Sorry, I'm not.
No, that's okay. I think, based, a
I
lot of
guess-
this.
I
lot
think
of
that's
this
what's
is-
confusing some of
Yeah,
us.
a lot of this is based on what the grant, program requirements are.
Sure.
So when you're talking about reconnecting communities and neighborhoods, which is the one we just applied for, you better take a section of Home Street that connects to downtown.
I got you.
See what I'm saying?
Okay.
Because they're looking to make sure that you're gonna meet the requirements of the particular grant program. So that's one reason why we chose that section as well, is it's probably the most needed. But, you know, again, you're applying for, try to meet certain specific criteria for the grant.
Okay.
And yeah, so we're wanting to apply twice and hope we get one.
Okay.
And then the second go-round would be to go after additional funding to do more of the Home Street or the High Street corridor that we didn't do in the first one.
Okay. Well, and I guess I'm with John a little bit on this, is we did just upgrade, we spent money to upgrade parts of that.
Oh,
And
sure.
So to go back and put more money toward tearing down and putting back something that we just spent money on. So
Yeah.
the water makes sense.
Yeah, John, if you don't mind.
Sure,
this
yeah.
question. Chuck, can you clarify something for me? I'm a little bit confused.
Okay?
I think a question was asked as to whether the current grant application you have,
The 27 million.
this,
Okay.
your city putting up seven, city and state putting up seven, for the 20 million for a $27 million total. That $27 million total does or does not include the cost of our utility relocation?
Our 1.79
Does not.
million.
It does not.
Does not.
Okay. So if that grant is achieved, how what is the thought process of, is there's no extra money? Is that, I guess, what happens if we get that without our money, without our expenses accounted for? I understand what we're doing the second go around. The second go around, you're going to include our expenses in there and our whatever potential match we might have. But if you all get to $27 million without any money for our utility relocations, what do we need to do? What are we supposed to do? I mean, I know we'll probably end up doing the water anyway, but in terms of the other stuff, what is the plan if that comes through?
Well, the preliminary design, which is going to be finished up here in the next several weeks, identifies both electric and telecom infrastructure that needs to either be relocated or, out of the way so
Okay.
that the project can meet its goals.
Because would we be on the hook?
And your staff's been involved in this
Right.
conversation.
Right, I understand.
But would we be on the hook for 1.8 million or on the hook for 360,000 in match? Our total cost, if you add up our three costs for water, electric, and telecom, is 1.8 million.
Okay.
But
A 20% match of that would be 360.
I'm not sure that money's tied to that cost.
No, no, no,
But
no.
if they do
Yeah.
it,
No.
if they do the $27 million project and those costs aren't in there and they want us to relocate water, electric, and
I
that,
guess-
we're
I
gonna
guess
be at
my-
1.8
my-
million.
Yeah.
My real basic question is, in this $27 million grant, you are not planning to relocate any water, any electric, and any fiber, telephone,
There's no money.
There's
for it.
no
money for it.
there's no
They're
money
planning
for
on
it, no
but there's
funding
money
for it.
with or without our involvement. With our involvement, there's still no money to do it.
That's right.
Correct.
So,
Bottom line is, you all don't have to put anything into this. You all are gonna expend money to do what infrastructure upgrades or whatever need to be done if we receive that grant.
Mhm.
You're gonna do the water line, you're gonna do telecom, electric, whatever is necessary to complete the project, just like Second Street.
But we got reimbursed for all those except water. I believe, didn't we?
I think water
Yeah.
got $150,000.
Yeah, we
out
put
of
that, but
grant
we got
funding.
reimbursed for electric and cable net 100%.
That's correct, right? We did. Okay, so if
Yes, yeah,
So
it
if
was
you're not
$600,000,
getting money
$700,000.
in the grant to do this work,
Right.
and
Yeah.
we're not saying we're gonna do it for free, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, it's a public utility in the right of way.
And normally transportation pays us or whatever when we move utilities. I believe, in that true, Gary?
Yeah, that cost isn't borne by us. I mean, if
Just like
the state-
LG&E, okay, you don't
if-
pay it
if
when
the-
they
if the state
get
wants to-
reimbursed.
If the state wants to build a road project and they need to move utilities, there's a line item in the budget that says we're gonna spend this much on the utility relocation, and we're gonna reimburse the utilities for relocating their assets. So, I mean, you know, if that's not in here, you're just essentially saying, we're gonna have to do this on our own. You know, but we can pay for this, we can apply for this grant if we want to, but we're gonna have to move these utilities.
I looked at the estimate this afternoon, and that $27 million is basically roadway, pavement, all
Well,
those types of costs.
I'm sure,
Yeah.
I have no reason to doubt that. The issue I'm coming from is that if we're expected to move our facilities, then, you know, there should be some sort of reimbursement for that. If this isn't part of the project,
Well, I didn't get that from what Chuck said, that we were obligated. The only question I saw here on this table was the commitment of 378, that I think we all assumed was gonna be moving water, perhaps moving telecom. But with our contribution or without our contribution, that's not gonna happen. It doesn't matter whether we put money or don't put money.
Yep.
That's not, as far as utilities being relocated, that's on the city in the grant to figure that out.
yeah,
But I mean, that wouldn't be our financial obligation.
right.
See, I was under the
It's already,
impression,
you know,
yeah,
on those-
I was under the impression that there would be that you all would possibly gonna apply for a second grant, and that we would be considering putting 200,000 for water, 180, and perhaps more as matching that grant.
Well, yeah, and I guess what I'm saying, y'all aren't required, as far as I know, to meet that 20% for each one of the,
Right, but I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
general,
yeah.
but I guess the question is, that 1.8 million in cost that is on our side of the ledger,
right.
if it's not in the grant and we're not reimbursed, is the assumption that the poles and everything don't get moved? Or they're gonna go out, they're gonna be taken out and we're gonna have to replace them, or what's? You see what I mean? I'm
Yeah,
trying to.
yeah, I do, I see what you mean. And you're right, we did on Second Street, I think water was reimbursed for $150,000 of their cost.
And everything else was 100%.
And I think, yeah, electric, I remember that, getting
Yeah.
an invoice, yeah, for underground.
And this is totally different than,
Yeah, this is,
Yeah.
and Chuck, just don't be misunderstood.
Yeah.
We really, I support this
Oh, yeah.
project fully.
Yeah.
I think
Oh, yeah.
Home Street has long been overlooked, and this is an amazing project, and I'm so glad that you guys are doing this. We need to make sure it aligns with our business model and how we do things, and the Second Street, it seemed like all the ducks were in a row, and that made it easy for us to roll in. I wasn't here for that stuff, but I saw it on the backside. But this one, I mean, what I hear you're saying is, we're not actually making a 20% commitment. If this gets done, it could be 100% commitment, because it's not anywhere in the grant, you know?
Right.
And if it's like, well, the plant board's just gonna do it, then suddenly we're doing 100% commitment, not 20%
yeah, it
commitment.
moves us from 360 to
Well, they
1.8
can't,
million.
you can't obligate us, is my understanding.
Right,
We'll
right.
let hands, but you can't tell us we have to do it. It's a negotiation. Now, there's opportunities like John's saying, we're like, oh, hey, if the road's ripped open, we can go ahead and do a sewer project, or, sorry, a water line
Water
project.
project, yeah.
We wanted to do for years, and man, yeah, that's a great opportunity, but it's a strategic alliance. It's not, you know, us kind of following your guys' lead. And so, I know you've been talking to staff, so you guys have probably been already going down these opportunity routes, but I guess I just don't see what the 20% really does for us, because at the end of the day, it's a much more involved conversation about how does this actually get done.
Because when we last talked about here, we had charged David, when he loves these projects, for our next budget cycle to be looking for possibility if the board voted how we'd do the match. But we weren't asking him to look for $1.8 million.
Yeah, no.
Clarification.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So, So I'm glad that you came because I also need some clarification. So when we
I
spoke,
don't know if I've clarified.
yeah, well, not maybe in a different
You may be
direction.
a perennial guest here, Chuck, for months to come.
So when we previously met with you and your engineer, they talked about the 20% commitment and so forth, and they asked us for cost estimates before the grant application deadline. So when we sent you those cost estimates, we assumed those costs were included in the project, in the grant application. And then I did a follow-up phone call with Chase while you were out of town and talking about exactly how it all plays out. And he said, the 20% would be all we would commit, and the grant would cover the additional, and we could even do that 20% over 2 fiscal years, so it's not such a big hit. So what was the choice? Like, we provided the cost estimates before the application was due, but then you guys must have made a decision not to include our costs, and I just wanted to, I'm sure there was a discussion as to why that you didn't include the cost in the original grant application. I'll let you get.
That's, you know what, I can follow up tomorrow and see, but I looked at the estimate again today that they've got, and it's, I didn't see that, but let me check with Strand and tomorrow, and I'll get back to you.
We submitted the cost estimates before the deadline, just for that purpose, I thought. So
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I'm not sure I've helped y'all a lot.
Nobody, but it's been a great discussion,
Well, no, we're excited about the project opportunities here, and like I said, we're gonna apply a second time for the same project, hoping we get one pot or the other.
Yeah. Is there a possibility that, and I mean, clearly I think everybody wants you to win on the first round,
Right.
but if it went to a second round, is there any possibility, if our 1.8 million less the match is not in the grant, is there a possibility the second grant could include the 1.8 million?
I'm assuming.
That would kick it over the 20 million, then. That would take it to.
Yeah, I'm assuming it could, John.
I mean, that would take it from 20 to 22 federal, or 21 and a half federal, and then take the match up to
Right,
close to
8 million.
8 million, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say, just for myself, that if the 20% was helping you guys leverage a grant, and 80% of things that we support and want to have done, that's a different conversation. Like, I think you summed that up well. Yeah, that's a much easier conversation. But what I'm hearing is the 20% just kind of gets thrown in this big pot, and then maybe it'll go to things that might be aligned for us.
But we wouldn't want to
I don't think we can do that.
we wouldn't want to put 200,000 in the pot and be still on the hook for 1.8 million.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
that would
understand.
be.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, we'd be matching ourselves. I mean, that would be.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
You want to. I mean, I hate to do this to you, but
Well, no, that's
would you
okay.
mind? Would you mind joining us again in December? And
Well, yeah,
I hate to do that to you.
Yeah, let me get maybe a little more information on what Strand has done. And again, I said I've looked at it, and I didn't see that. But,
Yeah, but I
I'll
don't
talk
think there's
to
any
you.
doubt on this board. I mean, I think everybody agrees Home Street is a great project, and a lot of citizens in this community use that road every day, and visitors. I mean, it's a great project.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's one of those neighborhoods that I guess needs all the support it can get, and we think that this project will maybe encourage further commercial and residential development in the corridor.
well, you remember, you were still in transportation. You remember when Home Street was going to be the big project for the equestrian games?
Yes.
And all that was going to be done as part of the
Yeah.
World Equestrian. I mean, it's been talked about for a long
Yeah,
time. So,
yeah, it has, and they just made a recent pavement improvement, which the cabinet says that may last maybe 5 or 6 years. So they're hoping that we get some funding that we can rebuild that roadway, that pavement. So, okay, I apologize that I wasn't able to answer all your questions, and I'm not sure I clarified a whole lot. But let me get some more information, and I'll get back to you, John.
yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we're struggling with is just trying to figure out, what are the true costs going to be to us?
Right.
What's going to be
Right.
covered by the grant, and
Right.
what's being looked at for some type of discretionary match, or just kind of where it all lands when all the dust settles.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
I appreciate
it
that.
was actually really helpful that you came.
Yes.
So, because we didn't know there needed to be clarification
Yeah.
so much. But, do we have to make a motion to table it, or is it just discussion? I thought it was an
It's an action item. Hans, can we just take no action on it? Just,
Take action on it. Yeah. We don't need to table it per se, do we?
No.
If we're not ready to take any action?
and Kathy, you might put down your notepad, first item in December. Okay. Chuck, thanks for coming, buddy.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity
Appreciate
again. It's a great organization to work with, and I appreciate y'all's help.
When our people are excited about, working on this, and we just kind of got to understand what the dollars are looking like.
Right, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand completely. And I know Steve Mason is interested in dollars, so,
Yeah.
yeah. We have a conversation every now and then out in the driveway.
Yes.
But anyway, thank you all very much.
Chuck, thank
Appreciate it.
you.
I will get with Sharmista,
Yeah.
and she can share this with you all.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Okay. Continuing with guest speakers, our next item is Corn Ferry, who, as you know, we had a bid that went out on looking at our personnel compensation system. Corn Ferry had the best technical score. They're currently doing work for their big project for state government, looked at their system. Nichelle talked to them, and then we had a conference call. Steve and I, maybe 6 weeks ago, talked and had some questions. And, we had the proposals, which we all agreed were fairly expensive. And I think we kind of reached the point of maybe it would be helpful to have Jennifer come in from Corn Ferry and kind of talk about what all was going on. She kind of understands what we're looking at. I know she's had a chance individually to pick your all's brains to see if she understands exactly where we're going or where we might want to go or don't want to go. So with this, Nichelle, turn it over to you and Jennifer and let y'all take it away.
Yes, and I just want to introduce Jennifer formally. Jennifer is an expert in broad-based compensation program design, job evaluation, and pay equity analysis with over 14 years of direct total rewards consulting experience and 10 years of business management experience. Please welcome Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. This is great. I came from the rolling hills of Wisconsin to the rolling hills of Kentucky.
Did they send the bucket truck to get you, or?
No.
No?
No. They gave me a nice big car though. So I know I had an opportunity to speak with everyone earlier or prior. I think kind of setting the stage of what I've heard, and I think really it's about a dialogue and questions. I think we've had similar questions, but I think for the benefit of everyone to hear what is your most pressing questions.
Mm-hmm.
As Nichelle said, I do compensation studies a lot. I primarily focus on public utilities, actually. I have worked recently this year right now I'm working with Alabama Electric Utility. Cedar Falls is multi-service in Iowa, also another Muscatine Power and Water, also in Iowa, Kansas, Virginia. So seeing that big landscape of small utilities, I have one that had 15 employees, and then some very large ones. So understanding what that looks like and the challenges. I always like to have flexibility, but having some structure and guardrails, and that seems like that's where you're heading. You want something a little bit tighter to be able to adapt to the market, and have that flexibility, but yet still have some of those guardrails. So, as I say, I build systems and I test systems. So I also have pay equity on mind, and while there's not legislation right now in Kentucky, it is something that's on the minds of many. And so I think setting up the organization for, one, being market competitive, retaining and competing for talent, but then also internally having a sense of fairness. I think that's the other piece, and that's what the foundation of the way we approach work at Corn Ferry. So I grew up in the school of starting with job size. So a project, first we look at the jobs. What are the jobs you have? How big are they? What are the sizes of the roles? That is based off of, in our system, something called know-how, which is knowledge, depth of knowledge, across the organization, integration of that knowledge, influence of that role. That's what the first one is, complexity of problems, and then accountability. So we use these factors to determine job size, and similar job size and similar pay is the core concept behind that. We go to the market, we take a look at that, and then connect the two. And we can talk a little bit about labor market and what I've seen, but part of the project was to be determined of where do you compete? Who do you compete against? And I can use Cedar Falls Utilities. I just we just approved their new plan last week with their board. And I can share that report, and I think it would be helpful for you to see what it would look like for you. And I will send that to Nichelle after this. But for them, for example, we looked at their market of nationally adjusted for their local labor market. So every, labor markets change throughout, the United States. And then we looked at public, national public data as well, and then a local composite of who's in your backyard. And so that's how we marry that job size and that market together. And then the other thing that we do is then creating the structure and the rules of the road. So in their case, and we've been doing this quite a few with a lot of utilities, is we understand that technical roles have scarcity, thinking of linemen, engineering roles, and there's other roles in that bucket. We need to be more competitive there, but for the rest of the organization, we're going to compare to the general market because that's also where you're competing. So having the ability to have the flexibility and watch the market and adapt is what we do within that system. So those are kind of the worlds that we're working in right now. I think that coming out of the pandemic, while right now, yes, we're seeing some labor corrections, there's still a skill scarcity issue. There's still market competition. Remote work is still a reality. It's becoming more flexibility, but it's still, there's not everybody in your backyard now has to work in your backyard. They can go work in a company in Texas. They can work for somebody in Colorado. And that's something that's very, very different than what we looked at 5 years ago, particularly for the utility space. And so I think those are the challenges of that we're working with of creating systems today. So I'm going to pause there, and so questions.
I know confirming under open meetings, we've all talked with you individually, nobody in a group, just so you understood what the issues. In looking at our system, the way it's currently structured, just generally, are we kind of what normally utilities use? Are utilities use just a general structure different than us? Are we kind of with some tweaking the same as everybody? Or what's your assessment of how we, not saying it's good or bad, just as you see the market and how utilities are operating, how do we stack up?
So you do have job levels.
Right.
That's good. I will say a lot of organizations don't have that. Now I'm not just saying utilities, but that is something that's good that you have, right? You have some semblance of levels today. I think one of the differences is that there's a lot of levels. And it's hard, there's very similar jobs that are paid very closely. So the pie is thin, very thin. So if the market changes, it's, to leap up to the next one might be what you have to do to adapt, rather than that job really is, you're paying two different rates for similar roles. So I think that's one thing that I see, that there's the pie sliced a little thinner. In terms of, having ranges, that's great. I haven't tested and looked at what your range widths are and then all the guidelines that go with it.
Jason, Kevin, everybody?
Well, one thing that we talked about, I know Mr. Snyder brought up and we discussed, was as far as your proposal, and kind of we've gone through a couple iterations
We
now.
have.
There was the basic one where you just sort of do some testing of our current scheme. And then we threw in some questions which up the amount, because some of this is basically the cost of this study, right? That's what you have to be mindful of. And then there's you all do everything, and using your all's product, your all's software, and doing all of the inputting and all of the, calculating or whatever.
Right.
But then what came out for me today was you setting up our folks and train them to do that data input kind of part.
Right, and that's the job leveling piece of it. Absolutely. Right. So initially we started with testing the market. So using all your current job levels, that's a test. Some comments, thoughts on structure, design, opinion, and we can tell you where your market position is. But we'd use all of your levels. going to the rebuild, I think is what I'd call it, is the one that was the largest, where we do that heavy lift. And certainly we could scale that down where the HR team could do the job leveling. We would train them on how to do it. We would get them started, and they would do the job levels to get those jobs bucketed. And then we could tie the market. We would still do the market at least the first time, so that you have a roadmap of how to do that in the future, and then they could do that.
And we could still have input in, there's that national, but then on the low competing against, to make sure we're really comfortable with that. So we could build that in.
Absolutely.
So if we decide that's approach, then you would need to redo your proposal and submit it again.
Right,
for us
yeah.
to
What I want to do is take a look at the best starting place, to then leverage, to have the team do the rest of that job leveling and that training piece. In terms of the market, absolutely. That would be part of a conversation of who is your labor market, who are you competing with. For that local piece, typically we look at counties. The county, the state is a competitor. We know that. We can find similar, and we do actually know their job levels because of their recent project. So we know how we can cross over looking at them. We also look at cities typically, and then any other utilities that we can get the data for, and we create a composite, so that's one data point of that local labor pool that's relevant.
And you, I assume this would be public knowledge that the state uses your system, your software.
Correct.
So if we were to move to using that, that would help. And that this basically, if we were to move to use your software, it would simplify the decision making.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so talking about those three factors in our job leveling system, the one thing that I personally like about it is that it's standardized across industries. It's standardized across the world. And so it's the most used job evaluation system out there. And it's really where it all started. And it's based off of 15% differences in those roles, in terms of those factors I mentioned. And so when you look at it, you also will understand the organization and the differences in between the job size. And it's also from a decision-making standpoint of, did this job change? Well, did it change enough to move up to the next level or not? And those are the type of decisions that you will quickly find you don't often have to answer have to make because the system does it for you. Market, it's still tied to the market, your structures, but that's the foundation that you have. And so really each year as a board, the decisions that often then become, that you need to make are, how much do we move our structure typically organizations do it each year. You don't have to just pay for individuals, that is done a different way, but how much do you move your structure each year? Then what is your budget for moving individual salaries? And then for technical roles, what we have done with other organizations is that boards will agree to or have governance over of who is going to be the ones that we target a little bit more aggressively. And that's revisited each year based on hiring, retention data, what's happening in the market. So there is some guidance on it, but it allows those guardrails of making sure that you're spending your ratepayers' money wisely.
And that kind of decision, typically when you've worked with other utility clients, is something the board can decide if that job
correct
gets put in that second, like technical special category.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So that's usually an annual process. There's not a lot of movement, but there are times where, it's like, oh, we're really having a hard time in these roles. There's skill scarcity out there, right? And some roles start floating to the top, and hey, we're having problems here, and so then you make that decision.
Let me ask, one of the things we've gone back and forth on the last several years, and it's been the board's had that policy, is we have that 2% midpoint. Is that? Do you see that other places, or is that a function that our entry salaries are just too low?
So I've never heard of it, I'll be honest. It took me a little bit to understand how it worked. But what I do see is being intentional of getting or employees to the midpoint over a period of time and within so many years. So aggressive is 3 years, middle of the road's 5 to 7, conservative is 10 years. And so they're having a mechanism to move employees from starting rate to midpoint is important for competitive reasons. One, if we want to attract and to retain, and also to make sure that your new hires are not leapfrogging over current staff rates. So having a mechanism, I've seen it a little bit more simplified in that matter. In terms of hiring rates, in the pandemic, we have seen more employers, and particularly in utilities, needing to hire, either accelerate how fast they get to midpoint or hiring closer to midpoint, saying at 90% as opposed to 85%. Even 80%. 80% it kind of went away. Nobody was hiring down there. It's coming back down a little bit, but that range of that 90 to 100 is where most utilities that are still needing to hire and getting to that quicker.
Okay. Jason?
As Catherine said, I like the idea of you changing the proposal to include, I think as much as we can institutionalize this concept and we can kind of build it in, because it's not going to help if it's as complicated as it's been for me so far, because staff won't really use it, but if it's something that they understand fully, that they are invested in, that they actually speak the lingo to each other and they kind of get it, then it makes a ton of sense. And I think the way you're describing it, where you institutionalize that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think one of the outcomes of the pandemic, there's the pay equity conversation, but there's also career mindset of how do I move forward in my career, and what's the difference between my role and this role. And this provides some clarity to that. And the outcome of typically a project is a big grid of these are the departments, these are the job sizes. And the gaps between jobs, because they're incremented in that 15% difference that I've mentioned, promotionally, a one-step difference you can promote into, a two-step you can promote to, that jobs, there's a leap, but not, the learning curve's not, as challenging. Once you start getting beyond that two, you start seeing big gaps. That's going to be a tough move for, and so how do I get there is the question. Do I need to go learn more skills? How do I going to get there? Or the organization can say, well, are we missing a job here? Do we need to have that? Do we need to have a stepping stone? Because maybe we only want to grow our talent. So that's the other part that I really love about and that 15% increment. Because it has those conversations built in. And as you said, once you institutionalize it, you can see as an employee of like, oh, this is my path. This is what's realistic. This is how I can get there.
Yeah. John?
Jim, you talked about the 15%, which is an intriguing idea. One of the things we talked about was the fact that we probably have too many levels. That our pie is sliced too, it's not, there's too little difference between them. Based on that, what in your all's role is the ideal number? And talk a little bit about where that stops, including, right now, our levels go all the way up to the general manager level. So at what point do we have a director level that is kind of freed of the grade system or the grid system, and just depending on what director is and what skills are needed, is that something that's done on an ad hoc basis by the board?
So I've seen it done different ways, but typically, especially in public organizations, we still level all the way to the top job. Because you have to understand the ceiling.
Right.
Whether or not that role is contract based, you need to understand how big is that job and what is then the market. We often don't do the market for the GM role unless asked, because that is a board decision and board conversation. But even for a project like this, I would still level that role. Then we look at the directors. Directors, again, can be on the plan, but not, but we also have to understand their relationship of all their direct reports. And so not all directors are created equal. Cedar Falls, I can give an example, because they had in their prior system 2 levels for directors. Our system, when they converted to ours, made it 3, because they had directors with both function area plus business area of responsibility. And so they were a little bit bigger than one director that had just one function. So there's some differentiation that can occur, but It really depends on how you'd want to operate. Typically, we would go up to that director level. And then in terms of our scale of our system, the lowest job is a 4 in our system, the highest is 36. You'll probably be in that 10 to 24, 25 range for your roles. That's where I'm guessing, just knowing. You don't typically see a lot of roles in the lower jobs now because of automation. Meter readers are great. There's now automation. That job no longer exists. You're right. That happens. So we used to see more jobs in the 5, 6, 7, 8, but with automation, a lot of those roles have gone away.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve?
A few questions. What factor does employee benefits play in the evaluation of a position?
Not
With the market.
with the market piece. So if you wanted, so when we look at a project like this, we look at job size, then we look at market. We can look at base compensation and total compensation. Benefits comes into another category of the value of benefits, and that's total remuneration. And so I have done, for an electrical up in Kansas, we did exactly this because they wanted to see, on top of all that pay, what is the value of the benefits. But when you do a study like this, that doesn't automatically get covered. That's part of your value proposition. Where do you want to position? If you kind of know where your benefits are and if they're very rich, you can, do something different with your pay. However, we have found that the pension that is often, offered is not valued. And so it's kind of, you can't really consider that with pay as well, because that is not necessarily an equal offset to, a candidate.
Because what Steve raises a really good point there, because in 2013, the General Assembly, our legislature, changed it for all public and pensions, except for teachers, and they later did that, but they did it for city, county, and state employees. We went from a defined benefit to a defined contribution. And it's still not a bad plan, but it's not as good as the defined benefit plan. It's more of a 401k. So we've done modestly, but we've offered for what we call tier 3, the 401k, an additional somewhat supplement. But is that, I think what Steve's asking is really important, is when we set salaries for recruitment and retention, how important is that pension piece because the other way to do it, obviously, but we don't have the luxury, the county employees retirement system that we're in, our employees, that rate and those benefits is set for all public employees that work for cities and counties. So we don't have the ability to individually change that system. We have to do it as a supplemental system to compete. And it has had a major impact, especially police, fire, where they used to have 20 years and out, now it's 25. I mean, it's just a big change, and it has affected recruitment and retention.
Yeah, Georgia, I know, did this similar. I mean, you end up becoming on even playing field with private sector by moving to that.
But we don't have the luxury like KU, like if maybe we're putting in X% match, KU can be putting in an 8 or 10%. I mean, they can go to a higher employer match to enhance theirs, and we have to do it not as part of the core pension system, but as a secondary system.
What I've seen one utility do is, instead of targeting base compensation, they've targeted total cash compensation as their basis for their structure to compensate for that. So that's what we've, that's one way to think about it. It's also, once you see what your market position is from either one of those metrics, where do you want to position yourself, knowing that you are at a disadvantage, and so that's the other way to, I can't tell you because I don't know what that is right now, but that is a strategic decision that the board will want to make.
Let me ask you, I'm not sure if we are at a disadvantage in pension. I think we came from a position of advantage in our prior pension. I think we're like everyone else right now. So
you are exactly right.
What I was told about benefits that we as a board have provided beyond the pension. How would those type of things? Maybe more time off, maybe more,
You could certainly,
benefits,
We can certainly, I mean, we have a benefits team that can see what you have compared to the marketplace. It doesn't drive, it doesn't drive the wage decision very much, truthfully.
My last question, maybe the last question, I don't know.
No problem, big no problem.
The final product, if this was Christmas and we got our Christmas present that we wanted, the tool that you gives us, this time next year, 2 years from now, whenever it's completed, you give it to us, it will tell us what about our employees
Sure.
as it relates to others.
So it will give you a picture, one, of the organization, of what are your jobs, what are the levels, some aha moments, opportunities. So that's the first piece. The second, it will tell you what market position you're at for overall as an organization. And if with new ranges that are developed and guidelines, how individuals fall within that. And if you want to, one of the decisions to be made is, do you just want to get people on the schedule first? Make sure, the new structure and the new range, could be a cost to coming up to minimum, but then making a decision, where do you want individuals to be placed in this new range if they are found to be lower than where you would expect them to be. So that would be the second output that you would have.
So that would be the initial.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, once we have this in place and we've done all that, we're right,
Yep.
calibrated the way
Yep.
you're saying, 2 years down the road, when we're using this tool, what is it supposed to tell us?
Sure. So Nichelle would continue and her team would continue to manage, and you'd have your jobs. So there really you're going to continue to see your roles. What will tell you, each year where your employees are within their ranges, and market. You can keep an eye on the market, either pricing it to have an idea of where that market placement is. You won't really have anything different in 2 years beyond something that's kind of a machine that continues to go. I've seen systems like this in organizations for 20, 30 years. As long as you maintain your job levels and keep an eye on the market every few years of testing, and the HR team can certainly, knowing where to look at what's happening in the market within those job levels.
And ultimately, if it all works, we look at full staffing, retention, and then not just a feeling, but a true equity internally.
Yeah.
So based on what Jason mentioned, if you've had a chance to talk to us, and if you went back and you know that we were a little bit price sensitive on the first proposal, and of course I'm excited that we're getting gifts from Steve for Christmas, and that's good. So
Worst Christmas present.
worst Christmas ever. If you were to bring back a new proposal and say to do what you've outlined and that we could maintain and do this process, and we accepted it, time frame wise, what would that roll out? We're on a July 1st to June fiscal year, and that's when we budget and so forth. What would that time frame look like, rolling it out, loading the data, analyze? What would that look like? I'm not asking you price wise, but just timing wise, what's that process take?
It takes about 12 weeks, from beginning to end. It really depends on how fast the HR team can job level, piece the backbone, and then go into the market at the same time. So I would say, if we started in early December, mid-December, starting getting all the information, 12 weeks from there, would be realistic. And that would give you the wage, updated structures, recommendations, and then where individuals are placed on it. And then your decisions would be, how do we want to implement something like this from a cost perspective? Again, based on where do you want to be in the market, where we found you to be in the market.
Is there, from what you've heard, and not pinning you down, is there like an option A and an option B? Like an option A could be kind of what you described, the 12-week plan. And then is there an option B where you could come back, if we didn't want to go option A, come back and you make recommendations for, if you're not going to do full-blown, here's 6 best practices, or 6 things you all might consider to do that would make our system a little more responsive, more marketplace driven, and that we could, I mean, I guess if you see what I'm saying, kind of looking
Yeah.
at like a whole package, and then what might be some things we ought to consider no matter what we do.
Yeah, time frame wise, I mean, that's usually, with the holidays, I mean,
Oh, yeah, but I'm just saying, is
pretend the
that
holidays
possible-
don't exist right now,
Is that
but yeah.
possible to get an option B like that?
Sure. So I guess I think is that kind of more of our first original option A, right? Where we test out, like, or even just see what you have. So I think there's kind of seem like there's, tell us what you see, diagnostic. That's option A. That's the
Right.
light touch. The second would be keep everything there, but let's test the market and give us a sense of where we are in the market. Keep your levels, keep your processes the same. That's a little heavier touch, but not a full rebuild. And then the next one would be the rebuild that we've talked about, but having HR support that job leveling piece once we create the framework.
Yes.
That's
Is
Santa
that-
Claus coming to town.
Yeah. Michelle, you're sitting there saying, I'm never going to get to go home again. I mean, what do you think, Michelle? I mean, is that a 3-option plan like that? How's that sound to you?
Yeah, I kind of discussed it with her, and I said that in December, if we were to do the third option, where she trains the HR team to complete the rest of the work, that I can get her any information she needs after open enrollment starting in December, and then January we can hit it running full speed. So I see that as being doable.
I mean, for the board, I mean, what do y'all think? Do y'all want to see the 3 options and
I don't mind
in
seeing
December
the three.
seeing what we?
I don't mind seeing the 3 options, but I'm kind of sold that if we're gonna do this, we just do it once and be done, you know?
I think I'm after the conversations I had a very nice conversation with Jennifer Dane, the questions I've had, I think this is I see from this a way from us to get out of this, there was a previous board that did that, previous staff that did that, but I think the 2 and 2 below the midpoint I think it's just us chasing our tail, and we're scrambling after a goal we're never going to get to, and I think I like a lot, and I kind of agree with Jason on this. I'm willing to pull the trigger on this proposal in front of us right now.
Or do you want her to come back then with just option C?
I mean, that's fine, but I mean, it's kind of out in front of us already in
Yeah.
the paper we've got. I mean, I didn't know
She would have to,
She
she'd have
has
to
to
revise.
She
She'd have
has
to come
to
back to
revise.
us.
And she's going to give us a super deal. Right?
Well, I mean, I think it would go down a little bit from that last one. And what I just want to take a look at is to create that framework, because really what would change is the job evaluation of 70 roles. We would only do a portion, and the HR team would have to do the training and do the rest. And then the market pricing is the other piece that won't change too much. I do want to make sure we touch the market as much as possible. So I don't want to cut that back too much, but the heavy lift really is understanding the jobs and getting the levels right.
So if you revise the proposal accordingly to what has been described as Plan C or whatever, and I know we're having our board meeting a little early in December, right?
11.
The 11th. First of all, is that enough time for you to get us this new
Yes.
proposal? Okay. And, I mean, the 11th, seems like it gives some time in December for, if it gets approved, for, staff to provide you what you need to do your part, and so they can hit the ground running in January. And then, hopefully, maybe we could have, I don't know, the report, the end product or something like in April, which would be hopefully enough time for us to do whatever we need to do that impacts our budget.
Yeah, David and Michelle could have time to crunch the numbers and look at it and understand it. And so is that kind of the direction that we want her to put together a Plan C and get it to us, and we can get it on the agenda, have time to look at it, and get it on the agenda for the 11th, and go or no go?
Yeah, and let me just float, I really appreciate you coming down. But in the next review, if you just want to call in.
Yeah.
We don't want to, we really respect your time, and I think it's going to be a pretty short conversation. We just may want some clarification, but you could probably just zoom in and. we'll be
Okay.
able to-
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I think that, from recommendation piece, you know, I can go either way with that too. I mean, I was telling Michelle that when I typically in post-COVID, the only time I've really traveled is for board meetings and delivering. So, and that's fine. I think though having the conversations we've had are very important to everyone to understand.
Well, if you want to come back in April in Keeneland and it's warm and spring, yeah, we'd happy to have you. But yeah, no need to drive in December. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So do we need a motion, Hans, in terms of, or at this point, kind of like the first one, I mean, we're not really we're asking her to come back with a revised proposal. And is that just, we leave it at that and then us on December's agenda?
I think that's a good way to go. Trying, if the board wanted to memorialize that, you could, but I don't think there's any need.
I mean, because what we got now is kind of we've kind of got a sense of where we're going, and she knows a sense of where we're going, but our motion would be very general at best.
Once you have your proposal, like I said to Mr. Schneider, so once you have your proposal next month, then you can.
Then we'll
Take an action.
So,
Okay.
we're all good, I think.
Well, Jennifer, thank you very much for coming.
You're
really.
welcome.
It was
Thank
great
you.
to have you.
Thank
I think it
you.
really helped everybody get to meet you and let you talk to everybody.
Yeah, that sounds, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
And Michelle, we'll see you after the first of the year.
So John, does that mean we now begin the meeting?
Yes, we now begin. Yes, all of our guest appearances, all of our guests are. So, okay, now we're to informational. Mr. Zane.
Well, the first one we have is some puppy information. I don't know if Casey is here.
Here she comes.
Okay. David, can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. I just have to report, we've done a couple of events. We were at Candlelight last week. We had a booth where we handed out light bulbs and water bottles and Next Band koozies, a lot of information about Next Band, ACP, Community Solar. We also gave popcorn. So we were a very popular table. We were there on Thursday night. It was packed that night. It was the night they lit the tree. It was great weather, which we always love for Candlelight because sometimes it's not that great. So it was a good event. We were glad to be there. Our next event is we're going to be in Frankfort's Christmas Parade, which is on December 9th. We are going to have the trucks decorated and in the parade, but then as usual, Cable 10 is going to be airing the parade live. We're again partnering with the Cap City Radio. They'll have it on their air. We're going to have the trailer parked up behind. I think they're doing it the same they've done the last 2 years, and have the review stand behind the Capitol, between the Capitol and the Annex. And we'll be partnering with the governor's office because they'll probably do the tree lighting that night as well. So we have double duty that night. We cover the parade and the tree lighting. And I think I'm going to be emceeing the parade along with Paisley Banks from Froggy.
Look at you. Yeah.
So we'll have that on Cable 10 as well, so you can check that out. So we've been excited about the events that have been going on, holiday season, a lot of good things
Next time
happening.
we see you, you'll be doing the Rose Bowl, you know?
I tell you.
Yeah.
The other thing that we've been doing is we've kicked off a community campaign to talk about the value of a municipal utility here in our community. It's called I Want My FPB. We have a new webpage on our website. It's called, you can just go to iwantmyfpb.com. There's a little bit of information about our community, what's going on with our municipal utility, what people can do in our community to support their municipal utility. We'll be adding to that as things progress between now and the end of the year. We have a lot of good things coming up that we want to share with people and good information, and we hope that people check it out. iwantmyfpb.com.
Are we covering anything on inauguration? On the 12th, I guess, isn't it?
It is the 12th.
Yeah.
David, are we covering anything?
KT usually does.
Does KT
Oh, it's all
normally do
KET.
the- They don't do the parade and the speech and everything?
They cover
Okay.
it all. I'm sure we will offer to help
Yeah.
if possible.
Any questions for Kathy?
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks you for being here.
The next one is our Operation Nog.
Mhm.
Did we skip over public comment?
We didn't have any public.
Do we have any public comments?
We didn't have any, web comments either.
Okay.
Good evening. For the Network Operations Center in October, it looks like we entered 346 trouble calls for the month. The NOC handled 2,481 phone calls. Our locators did 650 locates, so about a normal pace, staying busy. So that's 2,642 locates for the year. I know
Will that start dropping off a lot now, Darren, in December and January and February?
It will a little because of the, landscaping and yard work type stuff, but really with all the projects going on, not a lot, no. As long as we have good weather.
Yeah.
A lot of rain or a lot of snow will slow things down a bit, but contractors are still working and still trying to get projects done, so no, it'll stay pretty busy.
Okay.
So that's all I
Any
have.
questions for,
That's
you still fully staffed?
Yeah.
Good.
Yep. Got them all on the road.
Any questions for Darren?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next one is our customer service, taxes. Actually, it's very special today for Cassie. David, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, Cassie, I'll go ahead if you want and give your report, and then I'll go into that a little bit.
They won't embarrass you.
Make me cry and then see what we're doing. Our board reports are on pages 105 to 109 of your packet. Just a couple things to highlight. We touched over 9,000 customers this month with our team. We do have our 2 newest team members working independently. They've only been here about 8 weeks, but they're doing a great job. Just this week started working independently, and we're going to hopefully continue to be more efficient and get back to the wait times that we were seeing before, but still doing a great job. Something else I wanted to note, that we had a really big escalation in our customer compliments this month, and we've just seen that trend continue to grow as we made an active effort to ask people to give us good Google reviews if they had a good experience. Or just take the time to shoot us an email. And it's really nice to have our customers in our community take the time to say, I had a good experience, or you did a good job, or thank you for helping me. And we're actually seeing that like in the numbers that we're getting and our rating that's improved. So just a big shout out to my team for kind of pushing that, and I really appreciate them.
So in terms of staffing, where are you at? In terms of, you've got 2 new people on, where does that put you in terms of where we eventually need to get to?
Right now, I think that we still have 1 to 2 open positions in our budget, and whether we leave them there long term or whether we change that going forward, I think those decisions would be made later once we see the impact the kiosks have, or any structural changes that come. With these 2 people, we are closer to our highest staffing levels, but we're still not at our highest point where we were having less than a minute wait times. We are seeing them trend down, and that's good. But you want to provide quality as well as keeping the wait times down. So while that's important to us, we don't want to rush people through like a meal where they feel like it's just boom, boom, boom and out the door. We want to take the time to help them with whatever they need. So,
John, did you want
Cassie, I see here on the average hold time for Tier 1 and Tier 3, the 229 and 429, is that a different metric we're using, or is that number higher than it normally is, or is that a different, because I'm used to these numbers being smaller than that.
yeah, it's actually both of those things.
Okay.
The first thing is when the telephone system changed and we began to implement the Knox assistance during our lunch closure, we realized after a period of time that everything was getting escalated to a Tier 3. Which was unintentional on our part. We didn't plan for that to happen. So just recently we have implemented a 3rd tier in the phone system that the IT department's helping us with. What was happening is the NOC couldn't help them, so they just transferred them to 1900, which was just a queue.
Okay.
But what that did was put you at the Tier 3 representative, which is specialized in really billing and payment arrangements. And a lot of those people didn't need to be there. They needed to be down at the service level, but not at the NOC, but not at billing, but in between. And there wasn't a place to transfer them.
So we have implemented a third queue to address that issue. And then the other thing was the loss of 3 CSR 3s at the same time. Within about a 6-week period back in the early summer, we lost 3 level 3 representatives. And so that had a big impact on those people that did need that level of service, having 3 less people to help them do that. So it was a combination of both of those things. One we've addressed. The second one we are addressing as well, but you know, you got to start as a 1 before you're going to get back up to a 3. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When will the kiosks be here?
I think that they were scheduled out about 12 weeks when we initially started this, so I'm still thinking that they're on track for January, February-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm not on those weekly meetings, so I apologize. I don't want to, don't hold me to that.
I believe Paymentus has a little backup in project management, so we're waiting to get a project manager, but it's going to be, we were hoping December. I think we're going to go a little bit into early 24 before we get those, but we're on track. But tonight, I would like to kind of recognize Cassie. This is Cassie's last meeting. Cassie joined the plant board in 1996, so she has helped navigate the department through many things over the last 27 years. You think she came in 96, and then just 3 years later in 1999, the plant board moved from electric water cable into the full service telecommunications network. So you can imagine all the changes that she's seen in that time. Also, most recently, helping navigate through a kind of once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. So, Cassie, I've seen her embrace process changes and support leveraging technology to improve service. Her dedication, expertise, and commitment to her team and customers has definitely set a high standard. Cassie, your passion for ensuring customer satisfaction has definitely contributed to the success of FPB. So we'd like to thank you and extend a really heartfelt thank you for your 27 years.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just really quick, because I know it's a long meeting, but I want to say I appreciate my team. They're a wonderful team, and everyone here for supporting me in this community. What we do matters, and so I hope our community is paying attention to the changes that are coming. So thank you.
Thank you, Cassie.
Told you not to do
I know.
that.
Well, thank you for the thousands and thousands, seriously, the thousands of people you've helped. You've made a real difference.
You want to feel like you made a difference, and I hope that I have, and I know that this company does. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't know David gonna give a long speech, but I know David want to say something. I'm so glad he did that. I feel the same way.
Yes.
He's an excellent employee. We are so lucky we have her.
Yes, we are.
Adam will have telecommunication.
Good evening. The telecom port's on page 111 of your board packet with customer penetration. Pages 112 and 113 are the outages. We had 3 outages last month. Also, page 114 is the trouble call, which is a little lower than previous months. Real quick on the next man, crews are working in Peaks Mill, Stedmantown area, Louisville Road, and Heritage Subdivision. The splicing crews are in Spring Hill and on Nineveh Road. The underground crew, I think I mentioned it last month, they're going to try to finish up at the end of November. So all of the conduit placement will be done for the entire project. So we're hoping they get that done. As of today, we activated 2 new ponds, or actually it's more than 2, at Two Creeks area, Sunset Drive area, and also Ducker's Point areas will be activated for next man. And last month, Mr. Snyder asked me how many homes had access to next man, and I misspoke. I was thinking we're about 50% complete. We're actually a little over 15,700 homes have access to it. So we're actually 60%. I think I said 5,000, so I just wanted to correct that. So,
Okay.
Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next, we have electric department. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Electric report starts on page 115, goes to 118. Starting on page 115, you'll see that our SAIDI numbers for the month of October is 41.449. You look at our pie chart, you can see our percentages for each type of outage we had. Page 117 takes those percentages and shows you the actual number of outages. We had a total of 26 outages for the month of October. And then on the last page shows your top 10 outages for the month of October. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Scott?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. For the AMI report, we are at 14,852 electric installs and 10,175 water installs. So business as usual there. We're kind of slowly chipping away at it, but no new or significant changes there. If there's no questions on AMI, I can go ahead and hit the SEPA report too. Okay. So SEPA for September, our total bill was $81,878, which is kind of our routine bill, if you will. Our net payment for SEPA was $160,569, and which resulted in a monthly profit, if you will, to the plant board of $78,691. And our 2023 net benefit through September is currently $920,556.
Is that about, David, where you thought it would be?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any questions?
Any questions for Travis? I might add, during the interim, since we last met, the city, as you know, is having, I think has a meeting coming up on the bridge downtown. And I got a call from the mayor and then a call from Penny Peevler, and they're interested in us working with them on what that bridge project, I think they want to light it similar to the Big Four Bridge in Louisville. And so I suggested that Penny meet with Travis and to kind of understand the scope so he can kind of see what the issues are. And we talked about it in the agenda meeting last week, and we added an additional person to the team.
Right.
Catherine, our bridge expert, is going to be joining Travis on this project. So just keep us posted on what they're looking at, the prices, so we can kind of see where we're at on it.
Okay, yep, will do.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, for the KYMEA, I mean, there is a special call meeting between the meeting, really discussing the new generation project.
Okay.
Staff asked the board authorize more cost on the, engineering, the study, the more detail. Which is the board. I voted against it, but the board voted for it overall. QM also going to have a meeting tomorrow, so that's kind of the things. And they do have already have a 2 budget committee meeting and all requirement group meeting. Start to talk about next year budget, the forecast, what it looks like, potential rate change. Looks like to me potentially they are still even. They expect FERC going to give the refund, which is probably up to the $14 million, but the staff still suggests to have a more rate increase to try to be protected in case if the case go other way around it. But they didn't go looking for, but they're looking for like a $42 million total liability potentially they could have for the pancake if that go a different direction. So they are looking for funding 50% of it. So they also looking for establish a 60-day day-on kind of cash. So altogether, potentially even 50% of funding for the liability over the pancake by 2027. They are still looking for, this is very high level forecast. It's not a reality, it's the future. But potentially, the overall cash can be over 50 million.
So the how many days of cash do we currently get? 45?
By end of this year, not talk us. This is KBMEA. Based on the management report, they believe we're going to be 67
now,
days.
What's the required? What have they agreed on as in the number of days?
The minimum before, was it 45?
all different number, when you talk about in the old time, then the below a certain 40 day, right, will be trigger that, the cost adjustment,
40 days,
Okay,
yes.
okay, so the impact of going to 60 though, would cause us to have to put more money for.
Essentially, they're
What they said is just based on current rate right now, end of this fiscal year is already 67 days.
So they will be at 67 with the current rate right now.
Yes.
And that doesn't count the refund from KU?
That's included funding.
Well-
Yes.
Go ahead.
No. That's the funding is a separate. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The
That
deep
one
pancake-
we didn't see that money yet. By the way.
Right, right.
Yes.
Deep pancaking money, I know that nobody wants to spend or do anything with that, but legally, how much of that would be attributed, or used attributed to the Frankfurt Plant Board?
I assume based on currently we are the power proportion, how much we buy from them compared to total usage, we are around 54%.
Okay, but, so 54% of the refund.
Yes, but there is, I do want to
Probably,
explain to you, currently, FERC going to make another decision very soon, hopefully even few days, if everything according plan, but they can change their plan, date. But the part is, I'm saying is, there's already appeal case by the IOU to the Supreme Court again, right
Well,
now.
but again, I'm not
Yes.
counting the money
Yes.
per se in my pocket. I'm just trying to understand the reserve of what would be attributed to us.
The first round, they talk about 14.8 million. If, according to plan, the refund are gonna come in by, I think, December sometime this year.
And how would that money, if it materialized, how would it come back to each municipal?
I think it's a zero based on their plan. The reason is the deep pancake can be swinging completely different direction because they already appealed to the DC court.
Now, my question was,
Yes.
and again, I'm speaking in hypotheticals here. If it is judged at the highest level that we in fact, which deserve the money, KYME deserve that money, how would our portion come back? How would the portions come back to each municipality, each member?
That's what I try to answer it.
Okay.
Depends on the future FERC decision, also depends on DC appeal court decision. They send it back to FERC, then FERC can change their decision. I think probably the best, if you want to know potential, the timeline you look at, right, is probably the next board meeting, we can ask our DC attorney represent us in the front of FERC, explain the detail, the timeline. Based on what I know, is a 2-year process.
And then my last question, I'm sorry.
No.
Going from the 40 days, I don't really understand if 40 days was the benchmark that they had to maintain via our rates to them. What is 67, 60?
The management suggests they need, in order for them to keep a current reading, the bond reading, particularly looking for the new generation project, they want to stay minimum 60 days.
So that
based
that
on, I heard it today.
That accelerates the increases in rates that we would otherwise not get if they stayed at 45 days.
Yeah, if they had to go, if their projection is on June 30th, they'll have 67 days. If they'd stay at the 40 days,
We would get a
for next year, we could actually, they could at least lower the rates, right?
And
Actually, to me, is the part, if a FERC make a decision.
Well, forget the FARC part.
No, but that's a big part of the rate.
But the bottom line is,
Yes.
they want a bigger reserve than 40 days to fund their bond rating to build their natural gas that we don't want, that we've already
So
said
we will not participate.
that we're not participating in.
The
That's the
part
bottom line,
is,
is they want a bigger cash reserve to enhance their bond rating, to prop up the rates, and we've already said we're not in on that project, right?
correct.
Is it a board decision?
Yes.
KYMEA board decision to
Yes.
change it from 40 to 60 or 67?
Yes, it's their board decision, that's number one. Number two, I do want you to know the next year's rate impact, right? It's a bigger impact to us to keep, there's a part we didn't have time to really explain more, is if FERC start to refund the money, D-Pancake, right? Currently, management, the KYME suggest, right? Right now, it's still in the committee approved, but what I saw is majority board looks like support that right now. It's not only say because the FERC already say give you a refund, means you have a less risk already, right? But KYME suggests is not only keep the 14 million, they want to keep collect that part of the money. That's the impact to the rate. Actually, is a 4.5% rate. So I did explain to them my opinion about it, but I'm not really sure we're going to go anywhere. I'm saying is, I definitely against completely funding $42 million liability. This is assume we have the case complete loss from the day one to all the way to back in the future. But right now there are more things they talk about funding 50% of that 42 million. But that's still, you talk about another 21 million beyond the 60%, 60-day cash, 60-day time, depends on each year, but that's more than 20 million. Can be 20, in 27, can be 25 million. So that's why you add all the liability part pushed to based on 50% future liability, that the 28 plus the 25, that's the 50 plus the future.
You know, the way
Yes.
the way you're describing FERC and the DC circuit and the appeals court and all this, not to put too fat a point on it, it kind of sounds like a kind of court that never ends. That, you know, if they're not happy with this decision, they can come back and you know, if the DC court, if the appeals court, you know, the appeals court sent it back to FERC. If FERC makes the same decisions they made, you know, the last time, and essentially in our favor, at what point do we not have to bankroll this money? Can they always come back tomorrow, and can the IOUs come back tomorrow and start a new case tomorrow?
I think those will be great question, because that's why I'm suggest if I saw you have a lot of concern on that, I think the best is ask our DC attorney, both them.
And I guess the question I have is, Kimi asking those questions of the DC attorney? Because I mean, it seems like before Kimi even explains this, or even suggests this, that's a question they run by their DC attorneys.
Well,
Who we've talked
But
to,
is
they
it
seem
where-
to be really, really bright guys.
Yes, yeah.
So, I mean, they know what they're talking about.
I think would be great question ask them, because this is all the legal liability potentially. So the timeline, for example, when the DC court, appeal court, because DC court already made one ruling. By the way, I don't want to, I do want to put a fact in front of you. FERC made a decision in the beginning. Actually, it's a dual-way D-Pancake, you remember that. Then we both appeal to the DC appeal court. The court ruling actually is against the other party, and actually against the FERC's ruling too. So FERC rule another one according to the court order. That part alone is a current order right now. That's a refund, everything else. But right now, the FERC order is quite different than the first order. So that's the ground they gave to IOU to appeal again, because even the timeline is different. There's a lot of quite a difference. I'm not saying they have a stronger opinion.
Right.
I personally don't believe so. But the processes take 2 years. I think it's hard for all the, legal counsel come in and say, you have no liability. It's very hard to say.
And with FERC being a politically appointed body that might shift based on who the president is, one decision under a Republican majority and one decision under a different set
Exactly.
of FERC commissioners, correct?
Exactly.
So, okay.
And also the appeal court order can be single issue directly, can
But I
be
think
legal.
if you, notwithstanding the pancaking issue and the refund, taking all that aside, I think the irony in all this is, and I don't know the specifics of the other members of KYMEA, but we carry a reserve
Yes.
for something bad happening, like the pandemic, when we picked up $3 million in bad debt overnight, clearly. But KYMEA wanting to have a huge balance of cash is only a hedge to if any of the KY members don't pay their monthly bill. And they all have reserves. So KYMEA wanting to continue to build their war chest, to have big cash, is only for the purpose of if any one of the members don't pay their bill on timely, to cover cash flow, right? They have no other need for cash. I mean,
Their bond rating.
their bond
The
rating,
bond
but the
rating,
bond rating
yes.
is the strength of their members' portfolios when they go to market. I mean, if you go to market and you're building this natural gas plant, and you're saying, here's my audience, I can cover it, and they've all got strong individual ratings, how big a cash war chest? I mean, they're wanting to build a big war chest at the expense of our customers. It's the bottom line, isn't it?
The part is,
They don't need more than 40 days. They have no evidence, no track record, and no history of ever needing more than 40 days reserve. I mean, and you're exactly right. You're voting no on it, which I think this board would want you to vote no. But I don't know what our other options are. But I think to continue to take our ratepayers, so if they want to take it to 67 million, $27 million roughly, that's $15 million of our ratepayer money they're holding that they don't need, except for a project
Yes.
we've already said we're not part of and won't be part of.
they do need to have some cash for the operation because of the time difference.
They don't need more than 40 days worth.
Yeah, and also there is some cash for their operation. They have to stay in the MISO and the PGM. So they do need to put a cash into the system.
But 40 days,
for
but while
treating.
they've had the 40-day policy, they've not been stretched for cash, right? 40 days has served them okay to this date, to this point. I guess what I'm saying is, does this board need, in addition to you saying no, to also formally express to KYMEA and the head of KYMEA, we are absolutely opposed to changing that 40 days?
What we can do also, we can invite the CEO of the KYMEA come in to the board meeting.
I think that's fine, but that's not going to do any good. I mean, we need to tell
Yes.
him no.
Okay.
He's going to want to raise it. I don't care what we say. He's going to want to raise it to 6. We wouldn't be talking about it if he didn't want to raise it.
Correct.
I guess my fear here is that we have no control over what they can charge us at any given time. And that doesn't seem right. They can raise it to 100 days by a simple vote of your board.
We
And
have,
we're paying 54% of the freight.
we have a kind of limit, particularly after the notice we sent to them, is, how do I say, describe the constrained relationship.
I might choose a different word, but yeah, that's
Probably, I'm not sure it's the right word. I'm saying is, I have a one vote over that board.
right. Oh, and you're doing fine. It's not you. I mean, I guess do
and,
we need to even give you more backing? Because there's going to be other negotiations
Mm-hmm.
with KYMEA on a memorandum of agreement regarding all kinds of other issues as we move down this 5-year period. And I guess, do we need hands to give Gary, even more backing to express for our own documentation that we don't want this 67-day. We do not want to change the 40 days.
John, let me just say something. Where Catherine is the bridge person, I've kind of become the Kemia person, unfortunately, and I've had to sit through Kemia meetings, and when I've talked, you know, when they started this natural gas generation facility nonsense, and I'm just going to say nonsense because I think it's absolute nonsense. I told them under no uncertain terms the feeling that we had together that long-term investment in natural gas was a fool's errand, and I sat there before I talked. I heard Gary talk, and I heard Gary talk very, very strongly.
Yes.
I don't have any concern about Gary expressing our
Right.
opinion, and
Exactly.
I don't think he can express it anymore,
Right.
because you've got a lot of other people, you know, and you know, it's a diverse membership, but I think a lot of them don't have the expertise. A lot of the folks representing those cities don't have the diverse expertise that we have, and they're getting along to go along, and they're taking whatever Kemia gives them without question. And I think, you know, Kemia and the leadership, I don't think they particularly like Gary's questions, but Gary, let me tell you something. If you sit in one of those meetings, Gary talks.
Yes.
So I don't think we have to worry about that.
Oh, yeah, I'm not worried about Gary. Do we need to give any more back in that Gary can say his board absolutely sent a message?
I don't think we need to. I think we sent the message. I think we've sent the message we're going to send.
Yeah.
We're with us deciding to not become an all requirements member. This is all a negotiation now.
And
I
isn't
don't
this
think-
in response to that?
Yes.
Because they're
I
not
think it
going to
is.
have us to help their bond rating.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
they need something
They need
else to
something.
help the bond rating.
Yeah. We're good.
Yeah. I mean, what bothers me is when they do these things, we're taking a 54% hit, and their individually members are taking 5 or 6%. And to take 15 million of our ratepayers' money is bad. It's wrong. Yeah.
You know,
Today, I really express, you know, for the 4.5% not an increase is not something, you know, right now it's so hard for all of us.
It's not necessary.
You know, particularly for the argument, the liability of the FERC decision, particularly D-Pancake, you know, the 42 million, I'm not saying that's not a fact, but that means complete loss. You know, I mean, nobody really forecast that. So right now they are more looking for 50% that, but even that, you know, hike end up, the result of that, it is not the cash push the rate increase. It is the further build up more cash reserve for the potential liability over the FERC decision is the reason push it. So, but majority of them sounds like there's three choices. One is don't put anything. Another one is middle row, put a 50%. Another one 100%. You know, I definitely don't like the 42 at all. So right now, it's more of them lean to the middle, but middle line, even 50%, it still talk about total $28 million. Still talk about 4.5% rate increase even this year. So, you know, we've been talking a lot. You know, I saw that's the direction going. I would rather stay in the plan one. You know, because I really didn't see a lot of high risk. But the bottom line is 4.5, I try to talk to them, it's not something really acceptable. So it's a part of a talk, maybe shift that only 3% next year. But still, I mean, I'm fully letting you know this is in their meeting, and I know me and Travis attend that meeting. Travis, is that a public meeting today?
I think the one today,
Yes.
I think so.
I think our requirement is a public meeting. That's why I tell you all that.
I think
Yes, they are just the call workshop, you know, for the all requirement meeting. So, but that's why I wanted you
Yeah. I mean,
make sure you're on the same
What
page,
time
not
is
as
that meeting, Gary?
today is
Tomorrow's meeting.
tomorrow is 10 o'clock.
I don't think they're gonna, because it's a special meeting, I don't think they'll
Okay.
No, they're not gonna talk this
Next
today.
meeting, they talk about the AR rates, I'll yell at them, send me the link.
Okay.
John would like to be a
If
guest
that's-
lecturer.
If that's okay with the board, I'll yell at them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think interaction is important.
Might as well talk to that wall.
What's next, Gary? Safety? Did we hit anything this month? One minor.
One very minor.
We.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Safety report starts on page 123, runs through 124. We did sustain one minor vehicle accident and one minor OSHA recordable, both from our telecoms division. With the vehicle accident, it was actually one of our bucket trucks was actually pulling out and caught an open door of one of our parked vehicles. So in response, we're going to restripe the parking lot. We're going to make some nice wider parking spots. And then on the OSHA recordable, one of our installation employees actually got a minor puncture wound from one of their climbing gaffs. Very minor in nature. Yes.
Okay.
Received some medical treatment, returned to work without restrictions, but received a prescription medication, so that knocks it into the OSHA recordable classification.
Okay.
So, other than that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Great, thank you guys.
Sir.
Next one is our superintendent of water distribution, Brian.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members. The water distribution monthly report is on pages 125 through 127. We installed 2 new services. We had 6 main breaks, which those 6 breaks, all of them occurred within about 1 weekend, and we had 4 outages. We've seen the main breaks have slowed down for us. The ground is extremely dry, so we're hoping to get a little bit of rain. Besides our normal board report, we completed a new 10-inch fire system out on Fortune Drive for a bourbon warehouse. Then we also installed the new fire system for the parking structure downtown that Chuck was talking about. And then we've also started a line replacement project down on Walter Todd in the Housing Authority, section of deteriorated water main that we've had a lot of water main breaks on. So, any questions?
Thank
you all.
Next one is it's Brandon Power, our superintendent of water treatment plant.
Good evening, everyone. For the month of October, the water treatment plant treated 258,487,000 gallons of water for a daily average of 8.34 million gallons per day. Lock 4 averaged 345 cubic feet per second for an average of 223 million gallons a day. And there was 2.9 inches of rainfall recorded in the watershed for this month. Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes, Gary. That's our, okay. Item 6.1, consider electric tariff revisions related to line extension refunds and discuss potential public hearing. Travis, this is, this is the 3rd month, I guess, we've talked about this. And last month, we asked Travis to put together a draft of what an initial policy might look like. So I think the goal tonight would be is let him kind of explain what this is, and if it's the board's will, to go on and schedule for a public hearing, let people come in and give some comments for us to think about. Or if the board chooses, if we don't like what we're looking here, or even feel comfortable doing a public hearing, we can give Travis direction to go back and make some changes, whatever, and then consider it again in December. So Travis?
Absolutely. I think you covered the gist of it. So years ago, the plant board used to offer refunds to multi-lot developments. So the developer would front the cost, and as lots were sold and houses were built and people moved in, the developer would receive a refund. So the proposed electric tariff provision is modeled somewhat off of that, but instead of doing a full refund to the developer cost, with the finance team's help, we've come up with what we're calling return of the net customer benefit. So the thought process there was, as the customer comes on, say in a year we get, just pick a round number, $1,000 in revenue from a residential customer. A large portion of that cost goes out the door. That's not a benefit to the board. So we changed it from, instead of a full refund, we would look at the customer's class. So if it's residential, we would set a refund amount for residential development on a per customer basis. Same thing with small commercial and large commercial. The formula would be the same. We would look at the customer class, how much revenue for each class, and then how many customers we have in that group, what the power supply costs are, and then we would come up with a number for each group. The proposed policy we submitted originally set an amount for each of those groups. One thing David and I discussed, and interested in the board's input on this, is possibly just having the tariff define the formula. It's the board's pleasure, of course, however you want to do it. The thinking there is if we have some substantial change in costs or our electric rates, if we have to change, if it's a fixed amount and we have to change it, then we're going through the 3-month process again. So the concept would be we define the formula for each customer class, and then of course as developments come on and you sign a contract, I think you set an amount then based on the formula. But anyways, that was the process. Talked to the accounting folks. They also suggested requiring a certificate of occupancy to trigger any refund amount. They said that was a good measure of ensuring that, you know, the contractor can build a house and get an electric service, but that doesn't mean somebody's living there and they're generating revenue. So that was the other revision there. So that's the red line version you have in front of you. Again, we were just trying to get more in line with some of the comparable utilities we looked at. I think this is similar to what some of the investor owns offer for their multi-lot developments. The policy as of right now today is if it's multi-lot, the developer pays the full cost. They don't get any refunds. Based on the studies we've done so far, I think that's a little bit on the less generous side. So we want a policy in place that rewards economic growth, makes it viable to do business in Frankfort, but doesn't overcompensate, if you will. Another thing the board mentioned is setting a fixed ceiling. I've proposed $100,000 a cap of $100,000 per development. If that number feels out of line for the board, again, I wanted to get something in there for you all to chew on. But seems reasonable to me. A couple of the projects we've had done that are going here recently, they would fit within that amount. They would not exceed that cap. So I think it's scaled appropriately. But if the board had a different number in mind, we can of course go with that. So the request this evening is consider the draft policy and discuss a public hearing date. December being a short time frame, it'd be a little aggressive. If that's what the board really wants to do, we can of course get it done. We were going to propose January if it suits the board. Okay, have it concurrent with the regular January meeting. Gives us a little bit more time to get it out there to the public, let them, you know, digest it a little bit, and that way we're just not trying to, you know, squeeze it in. Of course, after that, there'll be a third meeting to vote on the policy.
Let me ask this, Travis, just
Yes,
for us and then anybody watching. Let's say John Snyder is going to build a new subdivision with 30 homes.
Right.
How would this work?
Okay. The developer would have to advance the full cost estimate.
For installation of utilities,
Installation of the
which is the
electric-
same as it currently is, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
As of right now today, full cost, 100% cost up front goes to the developer.
This is only for electric. Water has no, we talk
Correct.
about 3 lines of business. This is only electric.
Right.
It's water.
Only electric.
There's nothing for water.
Right.
Correct. We have not, of course, I don't want to speak for them, but as far as I know, nothing's being pursued in that regard right now.
Water with the margin is generally just not something that's done.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yes, so this would be electric only.
Okay.
So developer comes in, he's building 30 homes. As homes get built, a house is built, an electric meter is in, a customer moves in and has an active electric service.
But the developer has already paid us or deposited with us the cost
We would be
to
paid-
run the electric and stub it in, do all that, right?
Yes, they would pay for all 30 lots up front
Okay.
before construction would commence.
Mhm.
So they pay that entire cost. Houses are being built. As people move in, we get, we have proof of an active electric service. Obviously, that's within house to us, so we can find that easily. And the certificate of occupancy, we would determine that per customer refund amount. For residential, as of right now today, it's kind of right in that $2,000 range. So that was looking at a 5-year net benefit. So it's, a few $100s a year. We're giving you a 5-year return, basically. So as they provide that certificate of occupancy, we have the active electric service, we would issue a refund for that one home. They're not getting it all back.
And that would go to the developer.
Correct, yes.
And if So, but our ratepayers, if the subdivision, the developer puts the money up with us, it bombs, it never gets built.
Right.
Our ratepayers haven't suffered any damage at all.
Right. If we don't get the
There's
certificate
no
of
risk,
occupancy.
there's no
right.
risk to other ratepayers if the subdivision doesn't go.
Right, absolutely, yeah. So if we go out there and we build, say, 30 transformers, we've already been paid to do that. Whether the houses are built or not, we've already got that advance monies.
But if the subdivision does get built and the homes get sold and occupied,
Correct.
then the developer could get back so much per home.
Correct.
As they're bought and occupied.
Correct. It's probably not going to be 100%, but it is, in our opinion anyway, staff's opinion, it's a fair compensation mechanism. So, you know, we want to reward that growth to the board is good for us. You know, we need growth in the electric system, but rewarding it appropriately by setting that capped amount.
And then on the front of John's subdivision, Steve is building a small shopping center.
All right.
How would that work? He's going to put in a convenience store and a couple other things.
Yeah, so
a Subway and a couple other small things.
Right. We would have a similar amount, but the inputs to the formula would just be different. So we would look at the light commercial class. If it's a gas station, for instance, we would say, okay, that's a light commercial. The net benefit on a light commercial new customer is, X amount.
Okay.
It's similar again to residential. It's in that like $2,000 range for a 5-year net benefit.
Okay.
But yes, so there would be a similar compensation mechanism.
Same thing. The store has to be built, opened up, doing
Yes,
business.
certificate of occupancy, active electric service. Yes, exactly. Other thing I don't think I mentioned, we've probably discussed it a little bit, but I should reiterate. There's a 5-year window on this. So my thoughts are, from the day the contract is signed, there's 5 years. If the development is not finished, there's no more refunds issued.
What happens if a lot is sold? Because a lot of times, these developments, there'll be 10 houses in a 30-lot subdivision, and it stays like that. So
Yeah.
Developers just out of luck with
Hans, do you need to weigh in on this? This is a question I had for Hans. We had a lot that went into bankruptcy, 15-ish years ago. And I think there was some hand-wringing over that. So, Hans, I don't know if you have.
Confusing about whether the rights, the refund rights travel with the contract or whether they travel with the land. We had a case years ago, I can't remember exactly what, but I told Travis, so just define in the tariff as much as we can, the rights will stay with the original developer unless we get an assignment from that developer. But the issue you get into is with bankruptcy, the court takes it over.
Court
That-
will
Yeah.
So that's the question you get.
But does the clock stop? I mean, if you said 5 years from the time they start, they pay the money.
That's when I would start it. Yeah.
I would say 5 years from that, you don't tack your rights. You can define that in the tariff too. In other words, if I lose my Subway, 5 years 0 starts with me, and say you buy my Subway in bankruptcy, you don't get another 5 years.
I'm staying with the residential, which is simple, because this is common. You'll see a lot of subdivision developments. It may have 5 houses in it. 5 years later, it may have 10 houses in it. It may have 30 lots in it.
And under this proposal, once that 5 years is gone, any housing built after the 5 year would not be eligible.
Right.
for
No
refund.
refunds. Yeah. That's the intent. Yes.
You get the original, when you get it in bankruptcy or you don't get any more, the clock doesn't drop back to 0. You get if there's 2 years remaining, that's what you.
So we'd almost want to say whatever date that was done on, we'd almost want to put a date on that agreement or whatever that says after this date, there won't be any. It expires, yeah.
Expiration date.
Yeah, exactly 5 years from the.
So if the developer gets 80% of the lots built and occupied, within that 5 years, they may get that refund back. But if the last 6 or 7 lots, if they're still not occupied or built, then because we've actually extended the service already. I mean, for that 5 or 6 years, we've already spent the money and put the service in.
Yeah.
So it's, our part's done. It's the fact the developer didn't sell the lots or the people didn't build them. And that's where
what I'm
their
saying.
risk.
They could have sold a lot and not, and the owner didn't build a house.
Yeah.
That's right. And they won't, so if they don't build within 5 years, they're not gonna
But
get.
then that would be up to the developer and the
We
land,
can't-
the
we
purchaser
can't-
to
we
negotiate
can't-
that.
No, I understand,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I understand, I'm just, you know,
As much as make it as easy for
Mhm.
just
the
incentivize it, you know.
engineering group to track, tracking all that stuff can be a burden.
Well, this was one of the things that the DIG group in their report and some others came forward and said that we ought to have a friendlier policy to developers to build these subdivisions in Franklin County as opposed to neighboring counties.
I would say whatever Andrea says, it's an easier,
Mhm.
an expiration date, anything to make it clear, and easy to track administratively, is what we want to add to
Yeah.
the narrative.
So I guess the question is, from a board standpoint, do we feel comfortable enough with the general proposal, the outline, to let people come in and give us some comments, either written, verbal,
Well, I mean,
and then weigh them?
My understanding is, if it's in order, I'll make a motion to have Travis and Hans and David and the staff develop a full-blown tariff proposal, and publicize it, and schedule a board meeting for our January meeting,
Mhm.
or a public hearing for our
Mhm.
January board meeting. If that motion's in order, I'll make that motion at this time.
Well, before I.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I
sure.
have one question. You know, I always enjoy caps on things.
Mhm.
Right.
but It seems like how you've already created this to be so aligned with our business model and on a proportional basis. I don't know if the caps is necessary.
Sure.
Per se. I mean, if anything, this is the paddock is a pretty big development.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
even with that one, it's just 65,000, but I would just hate to limit someone who's coming to Frankfurt and
Mhm.
they just feel snubbed because
Mhm.
they're like, wait, I'm putting a ton of money in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm getting sort of short-shifted because I'm actually doing more than other people. So I think the cap, I'd be okay with just dropping because you've already got it built so well as a proportional representative net value to the plant board.
Talking about the town cap.
No, the $100,000
Uh-huh.
cap.
The
Yeah.
$100,000 cap.
Yeah, I think that the idea was like a safety net, if you will, but if the board doesn't.
What's the,
Still-
is there any downside in terms of risk to our customers and the plant board not to have the cap? If we have the 5 years in and we've got the money already on deposit?
To me, if you've already had the money deposited, I feel like it's a low risk, if you didn't want to have it in there.
I'll say, I guess you've done such a good job already building so many safety nets into this.
Yeah.
The only risk to me is not being someone who wants to make a huge investment in Frankfurt. And they're like, what is this? Why am I getting punished for trying to invest more in Frankfurt?
Right.
I just think it's an unnecessary kind of snubbing of someone who might actually want to put three paddocks worth of stuff here.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know where
Well,
to put it.
or if we had a large industrial,
Yeah.
would that be, would that $100,000, would they bump up against that? And I,
Yeah.
I know we're not gonna get the battery plant, the battery plant's a once in a lifetime thing, but if we get some large thing, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, Jason. I think, I really like the formula. I really like the formula because you're able to determine what our costs are at that particular time, and when you enter into that particular agreement with everybody, you'll tack a number onto that at that
Right,
time.
yeah.
You'll tack a number onto it, you'll tack an expiration date onto it. So we'll kind of know what our potential, it's not really a liability, it's
Right,
liability.
sure, but you know
is.
the numbers, yeah.
So, yeah.
And when you looked at other investor-owned, some others, did they have caps or was?
I did not see an absolute fixed number in any of the ones I looked at. I mean, they may exist. I took an APPA class one time, and it may have been in those slides that were going around. Some utilities had like a risk of serious financial harm type of policy, but I think you mitigate that risk if you get the full cost fronted, if you will. If they're paying 100% of the estimate,
You've got the cash. I mean,
right? Yeah. So
that's pretty safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Cash is cash. I mean,
Sure.
Well, and like I said, you've done a really good job.
Yeah.
Like 3 levels of safety nets here. I just think that only risks either us being back here in a year and a half trying to do a tariff amendment for one huge person trying to build a battery plant.
Yeah.
But I'd like to future-proof it, because I just would love to think that someone would wanna build something that big.
Sure.
I just don't wanna necessarily stop them.
So you want to restate your motion, John?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, they'll go ahead and.
No, but I
produce
mean
the-
for the motion to
Yeah,
put the
motion,
schedule.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to have staff fully develop the proposal that's been given to us as a full-blown tariff amendment, and have that publicized, then make all the necessary publications, and host a public hearing at our January board meeting on the potential tariff change.
And with that, but we're going, with removing the development cap.
Well, I mean, I think,
Yeah.
as instructed in
Yeah.
the meeting, just
Yeah.
everything we've talked
Yeah.
about in the meeting, yes.
Okay.
Got it.
Do we have a second for that?
I'll second.
We got a second, motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Travis, nice job on this, seriously.
Thank you.
You've done a lot of work, and you become an expert.
Well, maybe.
Thank you, sir. Number 6.2, consider approving Yes Network Amendment. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Staff recommends approval of the Yes Network Amendment. This is a direct agreement with a term through March 31st, 2027. We currently carry Yes Network on channel 790 on the optional Sports Plus tier. Year-over-year increases are approximately 4%, and those are anticipated and budgeted and do not require a rate increase. The other sort of particular piece of this amendment, our previous agreement for Yes was at that time it was owned by Sinclair, so it was tied in with the Bally Sports Ohio agreement. So this kind of separates that because they're now separate entities. But the agreement's been reviewed by the staff attorney and meets with his approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this item.
Any questions for? Okay, do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Harvey.
Thank you, guys.
Number 6.3, consider approval of Ethics Committee appointment of Courtney Carter and Steve Reeder. Hans is going to discuss, as you know, we have a separate Ethics Committee which has been established, and these members are coming up, and Hans contacted them to see if they were eligible, if they were interested in being reappointed. They both indicated they would be. It's the board's discretion whether to go with these people or to consider any other name. So we're not tied to having to do something today. These people have been on. They're highly compensated. They get nothing. And
But you was gonna say they were highly competent.
no, they're very competent and they're highly compensated. They're willing to continue to serve, but we're not locked in. If there's other names the board wants to bring forward, or we can reappoint these people, so it's the board's discretion.
I'd say if they ain't broke, don't.
And we're very fortunate. I mean, you look at the people who on. I mean, the people who are on there. I mean, we really have a very strong ethics committee in terms of Jill Master, who's on, was executive director of the Executive Branch Ethics Commission. I've actually started it under Governor Jones and ran. I mean, Steve Reeder was general counsel of the Transportation Cabinet and used to be River Authority, and then he was on one other ethics, wasn't he?
He did one of the first ethics cases in Lawrence.
Yes.
One of the first municipal level
Mhm.
ethics cases to do, so.
So we've got some really good people that are willing to serve, but it's the board's pleasure.
I'll make a motion that we, retain Courtney Carter and Stephen Reeder, two people I've known for 40 years.
Yeah. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hans, if you would, contact them and thank them on behalf of the board that they're willing and to continue to get that big old check.
Throw a couple next band koozies in.
Yes, that's right. Number 6.4, consider accepting a loan invitation from the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority and submittal of a loan application for a water line replacement project on Logan and East 3rd Street. Miss Dudd, long time no see.
Hello again. So last year we submitted a project profile for a water line replacement project along Logan and East 3rd Streets. This also served as an application for funding from the Safe Drinking Water State Revolving Funds Lead Service Lines program funding pool because we knew there would be some principal forgiveness. So as you know, there's a nationwide effort to remove lead from all water distribution systems. So with this project, we have lead connectors that connect our water mains that go along the streets to the galvanized service lines to the meters. So at this point, we have not yet identified any lead service lines. However, we do know that we do have some lead connectors throughout our system. So it's not considered a water quality issue or concern at this time. It's just simply complying with this overall effort to remove lead from the distribution systems. So the overall project summary that we submitted in this profile is replacing our aging cast iron water lines along Logan and East 3rd Street. And it also includes replacing the section of the service line from those mains to the meter, as well as from the meter to the home. And from experience from our guys out in the field is we're seeing galvanized lines on both sides of the meters, on our public side and on the private side. So the estimated project cost is roughly a little over $1 million. So we just received an loan invitation for the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority. Apparently there's about over 200 projects that people submitted project profiles for, and we ranked 38 on that list. And I think loan invitations stopped at like up to 66. So we're really proud that we received this loan invitation. So there's two parts to this action item. First thing we have to do is actually accept the loan invitation, and that's due by November 27th. Once we accept the loan invitation, then they'll send us the loan application explaining the details of the loan, and that loan application was due by, I think December 21st of this year. So basic terms of the loan is project's roughly over $1 million. It's roughly eligible for 57% principal forgiveness, which is a little over $600,000. As you know, we've talked about this many times with Home Street. We already have a budget for water line replacement projects, $500,000 a year. We'd roughly be responsible for about $400,000 of this project. So I've been talking to Brian and David Denton about how we would repay it back. The loan terms would be 2.25 interest rate, 20-year repayment term, semi-annual payments. So because we have the line item budgeted, we've been talking about paying it off sooner. Maybe we do $100,000 a year for 5 years. You know, since it's such a low interest rate, we're not using our whole replacement budget at one time. Maybe we drag it out a little bit longer. I think it just depends on what replacement projects we do each year, and then we can kind of play with how much we actually commit back towards the loan each year. And I'll work with finance on that.
This would be no cost to the homeowners, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, that was part of the requirements. The reason we also ranked highly was because we included replacing service lines on the customer side as well. From what I understand, we probably wouldn't even been chosen if that was not included. We couldn't just replace our stuff. We have to replace the customer side as well.
And that's from the meter to the inside of the house?
Right to the outside of the house, right up to the
Interior,
house. That's where we would stop. Well, I shouldn't say that, off to the shut-off valve.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
And that's not an automatic replacement, is it? It's only if we find lead, or is it an automatic replacement of that entire line?
It's automatic if it's lead or a galvanized line. If it's copper, plastic, it's not in need of.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not in need of
So
replacement.
it could come in a little bit lower.
Yes. Yeah, if some people have renewed their service already, we wouldn't do that.
But their match would only be 57% of what we actually spent, correct?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, their forgiveness would only be 57% of what it actually spent.
Right,
Okay,
right.
cool.
So.
Well, I think it's a slam dunk
Yeah.
proposal. Congratulations.
As a resident of Logan Street, how far down, or is this the entire length of Logan Street, or how far down does it
Let
go?
me pull it up.
John,
Does it hit the 500 block? Is it?
Let me look real quick. I've got it here. I brought.
Sure, Mrs. going to Lowe's and get you a big old garden hose, buddy.
I'm trying to make sure I got the extents right before I speak. Okay, so it goes from East Todd Street to the very end there past East 2nd Street. So are you in that block?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. And do you have galvanized line on your side? Do you know?
No, I've done my check. I'm good.
That's right. So
you'll approve my.
That's right. We did.
Yeah,
So.
proving that obviously anybody can do the service line check.
Yeah.
Well,
so John, we just reappointed the ethics committee.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Well,
there's one vote.
I will happily abstain from this vote, but I will go back to Section 57 of the Constitution. This does not affect me any more than it does anybody similarly situated.
Fair
So
enough,
I
fair
think,
enough.
hence, with your approval, I feel okay voting for this. It doesn't affect me over anybody else that lives on Logan Street, correct?
Takes into account everybody else too.
And how often do we get to vote on something and cite the Constitution in our vote? So,
Well, since I don't live on Logan, I'll make the motion that we accept the loan invitation from the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority.
we have and since Steve lives in the county, you want to make the second?
I'll second. That's my home turf.
We
Just
have a
real
motion-
quick, wait, real quick, do we need to make it to like accept the loan and submit a loan application? Because there's two
Hands.
separate steps to it, just.
I think you can make it two if they want an application. I think I would have.
All
to
necessary
separate
paperwork,
Okay.
something like that,
outline
yeah.
just to make sure there's
Okay.
specific.
Well, and so I can
Amend your-
revise my motion that we accept the loan invitation and submit a loan application.
Steve, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We're ready to go. Thanks, Sherman.
All right, thank you.
While you're up there, why don't you just go on and do 6.7?
Is that the lead water
Yes.
line? Okay.
Yeah.
So you've heard me say it. There's an EPA's, the nationwide effort to remove lead from all water distribution systems. So one of the requirements under EPA's revised lead and copper rule is to do an inventory of all service lines on both sides of the meter. So that includes the public side. As you know, Frankfurt Plant Board owns to the meter, customer owns from the meter to the home or structure or business. So we rolled out I thought a really, really nice video. Thank you to our marketing department. But we only received a little over 500 responses for people to actually self-submit their actual water line material. So now the next step is, and we'd already talked about it, and I also received the next band postcard in the mail. And I actually read it and paid attention to it, and I thought, well, let's try this with the service line inventory. So we've done several drafts of a postcard.
And you field tested it, right?
And I did. I field tested it within the company. I sent it to all the supervisors, and they forwarded it to their employees. And I received some really great comments. And I also presented to the Optimist at an Optimist meeting as well. And the best thing that happened there was someone did it there, and he said it took me 30 seconds. So if the customers, anybody that's watching, it takes us a truck roll, probably 2 men to go out there. Have to go into your home and come back, whereas if you can do it within just a few minutes. So any assistance is appreciated with the service line inventory. And if you don't have internet access and need any assistance, we're more than happy to come out there. There's a phone number on the postcard that everybody will be receiving, and we're happy to come out there. We've already received some phone calls for customers that couldn't get to their water service line, and we've already went out there and identified them.
Where's our first group at that you're sending this to?
So we're starting in the oldest areas of Frankfurt first, or older areas. So the Bell Point area and Buttermere Hill. So we have a list of addresses. I think it's a little over 200 addresses. It's going to be kind of our pilot, and really hope to see some responses from that.
And when do you think those are going to go out?
They're at the printer right now.
Okay.
And Kathy Lindsay, do you know how long it takes? I just approved the invoice, and I know they're at the printer now. So hopefully the next week or two. But as soon as I get them, they'll be. And I think, as Kathy still, do they mail them directly from the printer? They do. Oh, she's over here. Okay. So they just said in a couple weeks.
So when you're having everybody over Thanksgiving, you can send the youngest grandchild under the house and.
That's right. That's right. So, but yeah, every time and then just going out, just talking about it. Like whenever I talk to somebody, I was like, "Have you checked your service line yet?" So and some people have. Like the people I've talked to actually say yes. It's like you're one of the 500 some people that have done it. But so anyway, we're hoping this goes well. We tried to kind of make it as clear as we could. One of the comments were like, why? So that's why we kind of were saying it is in accordance with the EPA's revised lead and copper rule, that we just kind of have it broken down to some simple steps. And there's a QR code on the back of the postcard that people can scan and kind of explain how this helps saves on rates as well. So.
Thank you for all your work on this. I know you've really, and David Billings before you, you all water departments put a lot of work in this. So
yeah, well, I hope this works. So we'll see. I'm excited.
So, one quick question. I have a vague memory, which is always dangerous, of you presenting this, and you were saying that you guys were going to work with plumbing companies to check their previous records and has that worked out at all? Or?
We've reached out, and it's a lot of word of mouth. And Brian could probably speak more on this because he talks to them more directly. They just really aren't seeing a lot of lead service lines. We haven't, as far as I know, we haven't found a single lead service line. Have you?
No, the plumbers, as they're doing service renewals for customers, when they come in, we provide them a tailpiece, a copper tailpiece, and they'll come in and give us the information where they're doing their work at. So that's been beneficial. And every time that a new plumber comes by, I'm like, hey, we're doing this. And just, I gave him my number. I said, you can call me, text me, let me know the address and what material you're putting in on the service line. So that's, and that seems to be working well.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Do we need action on this, Hans, or just, I mean, it's an informational item, so I think, good. Thanks, Sharmista.
Thank you.
Thanks, next is item 6.5, Nichelle. This is a follow-up from the discussion we had last month regarding gene therapy, and I think the question on this was that we're not covering gene therapy under our health insurance, but if a person had a medical event, heart attack, emergency room, anything else, and they went in, would the fact they were getting gene therapy somehow affect their coverage for any other medical treatments they need? Nichelle?
So like you had mentioned at October's board meeting, the board has some additional questions concerning staff recommendation to exclude gene therapy. And so one of the questions was, would complications be covered under our plan? And the answer is no. If we would like to cover complications from gene therapy, we would have to include it in FPB's health plan. However, we are currently working with MedBen, our third-party administrator, and they are contacting our stop-loss carrier because we need to confirm with stop-loss that this won't be outside of the stop-loss. So as of today, staff recommends to wait for confirmation from the stop-loss carrier before we make a decision on adding coverage, if you wanted to add coverage for complications due to gene therapy.
So basically, this is an item we just need to hold over to the next month?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks,
Right.
Nichelle.
Thank you.
Item 6.6, Committee of the Whole. As you're aware, our application, I guess, is still pending with the state on the 888 homes on the broadband, or 880. Fiscal Court has scheduled a meeting for the 20th. Gary and Adam's going to be going, I guess, as lead presenters. They had a discussion, not at the last meeting of Fiscal Court, they did agree to submit a letter to the state and recommend that the current grant be approved. They're interested in putting out some type of RFP or some other document regarding the remainder of the county. I think the meeting would be more of us giving an update on the current grant, the status of the new grants, what's going on. I guess the reason this is on here is I think I plan on going. I don't know if any other board members would like to go. If more than 2 of us are going to go, Hans will need to give a notice that more than 3 of us could be in attendance that day, simply for the purpose of being there at the meeting. So the question is simply today is, based on what you're currently thinking, if you're thinking you might attend, Hans probably needs to prepare that notice, correct, Hans? Yes.
We post a meeting notice wherever the county and post a meeting notice.
Right.
Next Monday.
Monday the 20th, right at 3 o'clock.
I won't be able to attend.
Okay.
I will not be able to.
You're gonna go, Catherine? Okay, so there is 3 of us, so, and, there'll be no action taken, it's just, to be there as part of the process if the court wants to ask us, so if you'd go and take care of that, Hans.
Do we have to, if 3 of us just show up at a public meeting, we have to notice?
I think in the past, we've kinda like,
I mean, I know we did
it's
that-
cloudy,
I know
but,
we did that for the city commission, I just think.
yeah,
that's
it's
a-
just,
There's a discussion of public business and a quorum present, that equals a public meeting. So if y'all show up.
Even though it's not our even though it's not a meeting of our body.
That's
Even-
correct.
Okay.
I know there's that exemption, like if all 5 of us or 3 of us went to a conference or whatever, but this is a little different in terms of,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It gets cloudy when you're talking about the broadband project.
Right.
And then you've got 3 folks there. It'd be, what we'll do is we'll just post a notice here and then send it down to the
yeah.
county and have to take it.
When we did the same thing, we went to look at LG&E's solar facility that time. We posted that we were all there on the grounds at the same time, so. Okay, next, pole attachment fee. All this one is Adam and I think David and Hans and Gary have done some work. Currently, we pay, I think, Adam, are you still here? Didn't you say, I think we're paying about $40,000 a year to other providers to attach our lines to their poles? The question is, do we want to do some type, I guess, what it was considered an audit to determine who all's on our poles and review our fee schedule and bring it back to basically bring whatever we're charging for people to attach our pole, similar to what we're paying to attach to other people's poles. Really see, we think we know who on our pole, but I mean, Adam, is there anything else you wanna?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a couple things, and Travis can chime in here too, is like, hire somebody to go and look and see all the attachments and what that, based on the current rate that we have, what that would be, if that's something we want to pursue and start charging other attachers to the pole, is basically what we're looking at.
And there are pole attachment auditors. I didn't know that, but there's people who do that, so.
So we don't charge.
So we don't charge now?
No.
We do with AT&T.
We do with AT&T. We have a joint use, and that was it 40s for the agreement. I mean, it's a real old agreement, but currently, like telecom right now today, between AT&T, Bluegrass Energy, and KU, we pay roughly $40,000 a year to attach to those poles.
And there's Kentucky Wired that's attaching to our poles, and
I think we need to have it on.
so I guess the question is, I mean, there's nothing for us to act on as much as if Adam then want to pursue getting a poll auditor and let them look at it and bring us back a report as what it looks like, what other people's fees are, and do we want to do anything? Gary?
Mr. One, actually, that's probably most is electrical work, because it really is Travis and his group people probably need a secure send a request proposal, then you bring back to the board, then we can figure out the cost, and then the scope of work, how long they can finish the work.
Okay, is that okay for them to proceed with?
I mean, and we need someone from the outside to come do the audit?
Travis or?
Travis is nodding yes, so.
That would be my suggestion. It's exceptionally time consuming because you have to go to every poll. There's also a lot of institutional knowledge somebody can bring in. They could assist us with, you look at a poll, there's 5 telecom attachments, an expert is gonna be able to say AT&T, Verizon, so, there's 10 to 15,000 polls that will need to be checked if we do an absolutely comprehensive audit. So yeah, it's just the time and expertise I think is worth.
So is this just telecom? Is that the only?
Telecom and electric.
No, this would be the electric poles.
Yeah, usually the structure owner, which in most cases is electric. Does the billing. It's the structure owner electric.
So it'd
I'm
be.
saying, is there any other lands on the pole that are not ours other than telecom?
Yes, I mean you'll have AT&T on some poles.
Is there any other types of wires outside of telecom wires?
Is only telecom, is there any, would any other electric providers be attached to our poles?
No. Shouldn't be.
Bluegrass, I mean, there's.
No.
There's nothing to act on as
We'll
close.
come
Yeah,
back.
you'll bring
We'll-
back a proposal and then we can go from there. Okay. Thanks, Adam. Next one, 6.9, what do we have total hands? 4?
Thereabouts. I know Kathy has sent out about 3, and then we've got a supplemental from, I can't think of the.
Stokeen
the gentleman.
yeah.
Yes, sir, estimate. I think there were 4 in total. Gary and I had a contact, I can't think of the limestone folks. They indicated they were not going to submit.
Okay.
So there will be 4.
Okay. And I think we've circulated them. I guess the question, we can approach it one of 2 ways. I mean, maybe there's other ways, but 2 that come to mind, we can discuss it now and go through them. Or if you want it, one thought that I thought we might do is appoint 2 of us, and then Kathy, Lindsay, Hans, and Gary to review them, and within Gary's small purchase authority, go on and secure someone to represent us in the 2024 General Assembly. And we're still pending. What's our status on the League of Cities, Gary?
They have a group meeting, JD and the group of the Old County member, which is the most. There's 5-6 of them in the meeting today, 9:30 Zoom meeting. And I share with you some of the email being sent by the League City and the communication. Basically, League City plan to set a standalone group to help assist. And I think they are in the detailed process for the JD going to have a draft, kind of a rule, everything else sent to everyone. And also, the formal KMUA president, which is Dave Carroll, going to look at a preliminary budget and put together. It's kind of in the motion.
So we don't have a firm proposal yet from KLC or a
Not
proposed
yet.
rate? But
Not
theirs
yet.
will be more just general monitoring legislation, things of that nature.
There's some number being talked about, but it's not finalized.
Okay.
Usually, as you know, KMU have a budget around 300,000. The number they talk about is 1/3 of it.
So it'd be lower than what we,
But the another part I do want to know in the beginning, I don't know how many utilities going to choose that. So the number could be less than 44 we had it before. So, and they can divide a
So
certain
that's something
amount. For
we'll-
example, if it's 100,000, then you assume if it's a 20 utility.
be 5,000 each or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah,
hard
so,
to.
so we'll bring that back in December or whenever they're ready.
Yeah.
And then on the other matter.
Typically, what they done before is based on how many customers you have. Based on customer number, there's a ratio tie into, but end up it's a similar number. The bigger, the more customer you have, proportionally you have a higher rate.
Right.
Yes.
On the other thing, to engage a specific legislative agent for this session, how do y'all want to proceed? We can discuss it, or we can designate the group and then let Gary know, because we probably need to try to get somebody on board by December 1 to prepare for the session.
They designate two members, John Snyder was willing to be there. I don't know.
Well, thank you, Jason. I tell you what, I'm in a little bit of a weird situation working with the legislature, and I think what I'd like to say at this time publicly is I certainly think we need to hire someone to represent our interest and the interest of our ratepayers during this next session. That being said, John has a lot of experience. I know Steve as well has a lot of experience. I would recommend that those two work with the staff in order to come up with something, and we can approve. Hopefully, have something, some kind of proposals for us to do at the December meeting. I would,
Or I like the idea of Gary being able to go.
or if he can, if he can get it under his purchase authority.
Yeah, and
I'm fine
definitely,
doing
if he
that.
can't do it within his purchasing, then we bring it back.
Yeah, that's
Well,
fine.
I mean, if you gave me 4 names of lobbyists, it would just be 4 made-up names.
Yeah,
I have
but everybody has seen the resumes. I mean, if anybody has a particular,
You guys have
yeah, I mean,
knowledge and
yeah.
experience.
I mean, we got some very good proposals. I mean,
There are some good people
Yeah.
here. I will tell you that. There's some really, really good people that responded, and I think it will be money, I think it will be money well spent for our ratepayers defending, looking out for the interest of our ratepayers this session. I think it'd be a good thing for us.
Okay. So
You want to make a motion on this one? We probably need a motion.
We'll do it. I haven't made a motion before. So move that Steve and John Cubine meet with Gary and staff to be able to look through the bids, pick a lobbyist that we'd like to have represent us in that coming session, and go ahead and sign that contract and move forward with it, given the time frame we have for preparation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
No second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So, Kathy, if you'll set up something in the next couple days, with me, Steve, Kathy, Lindsay, Gary, and Hans. And, next is, this is is Kathy Lindsay here?
The disembodied voice of Kathy Lindsay.
Can you join us?
Eventually.
Did she say yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, she said yes.
I don't think she's going to refuse.
On this next one, request a resolution from the city. We've had some, I think, general discussions with the mayor and indicated that we would discuss in the board meeting and that we might possibly draft a resolution and ask the city to request that the current statute that establishes the plant board not be changed, and ask the city to adopt that and forward that to the 2024 General Assembly in considering it. So the question is, do we want to take that step? And Kathy would, along with Hans, would draft it and submit it to the mayor and ask them to put it on their agenda.
Happy to do that, yeah.
Okay, so the question is, do we want to do that?
I think it's important to let the General Assembly know that the city feels very strongly about the future of FPB and maintaining the 3 lines of service that we have, and not changing any of the statutes that worked so well for us for the past 80 years.
And the current statute basically gives the city control
Yes.
to put it on the ballot and let the people decide what they want to do. And that's what takes a 2/3 in enhance.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it would basically be, as opposed to the General Assembly deciding, letting the people of Frankfort decide, if the city commission wanted to put it on the ballot and let the people of Frankfort vote on it, is what we'd be asking the city to basically maintaining the status quo.
The status quo, yes.
Not taking a position, yes or no, just leave the statute as it is.
Yes.
So, do we have a motion?
Made that motion.
The second?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ms. Lindsay?
Get on it.
You okay?
Okay.
Next item, Gary, do you have any general comments or? Okay, Mr. Snyder?
Mr. Chairman, I request permission to call closed session pursuant to KRS 61-810-1C to discuss pending and proposed litigation regarding a collection matter, advertising matter, breach of contract matter, employment matter, cost recovery matter, and a regulatory matter. And also pursuant to KRS 61-810-1G, discuss specific proposal that if openly discussed would jeopardize the exciting retention, expansion, or upgrading of business.
Hands, who all need to stay? I know Charmista needs to stay. Kathy? David? David needs to stay. Denton. And so basically the board, Hans, David Denton, and Charmista. And if y'all want to just stay here,
Yeah.
we can take a 5-minute break, and if everybody else could go on and leave the room, and we'll get back in about 5 minutes. Do we have a motion to go into closed session? We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. A motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We're going into closed session. I need a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We're back in open session. Mr. Snyder?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to proceed on the matter discussed in the closed session as directed by the board.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's adopted. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment and having a good Thanksgiving say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Yeah.
We're out of here.